Once upon a time, there was a kingdom that had its own luxurious imperial castle, which was illuminated by the white rays of the moon. One of the prisoners locked in the imperial dungeon says that the little Duke Arion did not inherit the title of duke, but these things still happened after his death. Another prisoner says that if he were still alive, then the madman Vederick would definitely not have become Duke of Sirius. Sitting in the cell with these men is a young girl with brown hair, who clutches her head as if not believing what is happening. This young lady is the main character. She considers everything that happened to her simply incredible. The protagonist is 18 years old, but from the age of 10 she was called a genius because she was a talented doctor who always helped those in need. Recently, she became happy because she opened a personal clinic. The girl really wanted to know if she would have the same reputation as other doctors, but this was not destined to come true as she ended up in an imperial prison. The lady doesn't understand why she has to end up like this. An outstanding doctor lives in the Duchy of Sirius, but recently the heir to this kingdom, Arion Ilyard Sirius, died. From his youth, the boy had a weak body, and even as an adult, he was a regular in hospitals, and in the end, he died without taking the throne. His cousin Vederick Visus Isidore inherited the title of Duke. Immediately after this, he joined the rebels and turned his domain into a battlefield. The uprising was suppressed by the imperial family in a short time. Many men of the duchy were wounded or killed, and the population suffered enormous damage. Trying not to cry in a cold, damp cell from hopelessness, the main character speculates out loud about why she was locked in this place. She was the best doctor in the area and simply treated people, but the emperor's family called her a person who played an important role in developing the forces of the rebellion. Out of anger, the lady hit the wall with her fist because she just wanted to earn more money and fame and save people. This is not a crime. She frantically mumbled that neither the rebels nor the emperor were in any way connected with her, and she was not guilty. The unfortunate woman began to choke in her tears, but then a certain old woman with a long gray braid appeared behind her and called out to her. The grandmother asked the crying prisoner if she felt unhappy here. She shouted that it was so, because she had to leave the patient, who was about to stop breathing, and he urgently needed her help. The girl added that she was not guilty of anything, but saved people, and did not kill them. The old woman asked clarifyingly if she was a doctor. The protagonist says that this is true, and she was a very gifted specialist, and because of this, she considers it unfair that she should die. Sitting closer to the prisoner, the old woman asked if this was true, and the doctor wondered who this lady was and whether she was local. The woman admitted that migraines bother her every day, but she doesn't know the cause. She asks the prisoner if she can do something about it. The redhead sighed and thought that this seemed to be the last patient she would help in her life. She asked the old woman to give her her hands, which she did, after which magic began to happen. After a short time, the healer tells the patient that her symptoms are caused by a conflict of magical forces within the body. The doctor asks if she willfully accepted magical powers from another person. Grandma asks how she knew this, because she visited many hospitals, but nothing was found there, and she says that she is talented. The girl recommends that the old woman mix primrose, sunflower, and vetiver, then drink tea from them every morning. He also advises her to stop eating beef. The doctor tells the woman that she shouldn't have received the strange magical power, but that's just her conclusion based on the results. But suddenly, she thought that it didn't mean anything anyway, because in any case, tomorrow, she and this old lady would have to die. Grabbing the heroine's hands, the old woman thanks her for her help and says that if she needs anything, she will do anything for her. Hearing this, the lady doctor immediately asked to save her, but the elderly woman said that she was not an emperor and asked her to choose something else. Upset that she said to ask her for anything, but could not do the impossible, the protagonist said that she did not need anything. Peering through the only stone window in the wall, the heroine admitted to her grandmother that she was an orphan, so she had never seen her parents. The woman asked the prisoner to tell her more about this, but says that on the way here, she dropped her glass ball, which would answer her question. The red-haired girl was already upset that her grandmother couldn't do anything for her, but then she started talking about the fact that she could repay her with something. With a sly smile, the elderly woman says that she cannot save her life, but can give her a chance to survive. The old woman's magical powers immediately affected the doctor, causing her to fall to the floor with a clouded mind. Tracing a spell with her fingers, the woman tells the doctor to change her destiny by reversing time. The main character, under the influence of the spell, closed her eyes and plunged into a state similar to sleep. Having opened her eyes, the protagonist, in addition to dizziness, noticed that she was not in prison, but in some other beautiful house. She began to wonder what happened to her, when suddenly, looking out the window and seeing children frolicking, she realized that she was in a familiar place, or rather in an orphanage, which she had also been to before. Suddenly, she walked up to the mirror and looked at her reflection, horrified by the fact that it turned out that she had been reborn into her 13-year-old self. Touching the mirror with her palm, the girl thought about why everything turned out this way for her. Then, pinching her cheek painfully, the girl realized that this was all reality and not a dream, as she thought. She remembers the words of the old woman, where she said that she would give her one chance to survive. The heroine does not understand at all what it all meant. Still, she decided that her goal was not to die. First, she needs to leave Sirius, and thanks to her preserved knowledge of medicine, she is not in danger of starvation. This time the doctor, instead of becoming a rebel, chooses not to die unjustly by hanging. Looking at her dress, the protagonist realized that she had worn it on the very day when she left the orphanage and got a job at a village clinic. She was faced with a difficult choice that made her think. The heroine had to choose between her first day at work or escaping to survive. And with a beaming smile, she decided that she would simply run away. Having placed her large briefcase on the floor, the traveler noticed several guys who joyfully called her their sister. 3 girls ran up to the doctor and insistently asked not to forget about them and to visit them more often. One of the kids said that even though she knows that she will leave here at the age of 13, she is still sad about it. The main character fell silent and was slightly surprised that the children in her orphanage were the same as when she lived her childhood for the first time. Then the little girl started talking about how if her sister's character becomes even nastier, her intelligence will compensate for this. These expressions slightly confused the young doctor. Suddenly, a woman named Elburn approaches the children, who, calling the protagonist by name, Richie, asked her if she was going to Mr. Zitban. The teacher, handing the traveler a notebook with a pen, said that this was her gift and hoped that she would become an excellent doctor as she wanted. Richie was so surprised by this that she fell silent. The girl wondered how Miss Elburn managed to earn money for this, working in such a small orphanage. The doctor remembers that this woman risked her life by getting it from a basket floating on the river. She is the precious benefactor who gave her name. But then the orphan was saddened by the thought that came to her. The pupil, all the children, and everyone in the Duchy of Sirius would die if an uprising began. Looking away in embarrassment, Richie admits that she will not go to Mr. Zitban. The benefactress asked in bewilderment what she was saying, and asked where she would go then. Then the protagonist stated that she was heading straight to the castle of the Duchy of Sirius. The woman asked the child in amazement why she should go there, to which she replied that the chief physician of the duchy, Mr. Ark, was looking for an assistant. From the future, the doctor recalls that their country was once a peaceful place, but as soon as the heir Arian died of illness, a streak of bad luck began. As Richie leaves the orphanage and waves goodbye to all her friends, she reasons that in order for her to save the people she loves, she must save Arian. Remembering how she met the heir in the city on horseback, she thinks how he could have died so easily. She last saw him at the age of 19 and would not say that he looked like her age. According to the doctor, this guy was so sick that his cheeks were sunken and his cough never stopped. The girl thought about the fact that she didn't notice it that time because of Viscount Ark, but this time she would develop her immune system from childhood. The main character also suggested that if suddenly everything does not end well, then maybe she should find her parents. Remembering how she talked to the old woman in prison, the girl is surprised that she did not expect that before her death she would pray for them. Finding herself near the castle, the protagonist thinks that if she doesn't find her parents, she will get married and start a family. But first, she needs to visit Arian. Richie came to a respectable office, where she sat on the sofa opposite a handsomely dressed man with long red hair, in whom she was conducting a conversation. This gentleman turned out to be Viscount Ark Farrellman, the doctor of the Sirius family. He asks the girl if she can immediately become his assistant. The little girl, sipping expensive tea from a cup, modestly and confidently answered yes. The gentleman said that even the academy graduates did not last a week, and she wants to take this place, having only a letter of recommendation from the orphanage. The young doctor said she could handle it. The man asked her if she knew what was written in her letter, to which she suggested that it was about how smart she was. Looking at the silent and indignant Viscount, Richie thinks that since this guy considers himself right in everything, then the opportunity to treat the dukes of the Sirius family leaves its mark on his behavior. The Sirius family, whose symbol is the wolf, is a rich and powerful family, comparable to the imperial one. After the duke's death, the duchess assumed control of the entire territory. This lady is extremely strict and will never overlook the slightest mistake, which is why, for the first 6 months, the bodies of servants and maids hung at the gate every day. The heroine thought that even if the rumors were unpleasant, they could be believed, because the fraud stopped, and she died on that very day, like her son. But then the doctor began to think that this was all strange. Was it a coincidence, since Vedrik then immediately became a duke and joined the uprising? Ark, saying that he did not know whether to call her arrogant or reckless, handed the letter to the girl, adding that he could not accept it so immediately. She took the paper for herself to see what her student had written about her with a letter of recommendation. But what she read amazed her. Elburn writes that she is nominating her, and although she seems arrogant, she is very smart and strong. The young doctor smiled embarrassedly and sighed, after which she said that her teacher did not know how to write letters of recommendation for a job. Looking at the gentleman, the girl thinks that he is enjoying his wealth, acquired from the monopoly control of the medicinal herbs market. He seems to be a genius like herself, and his knowledge of medicine is very deep. Because he rebelled and fought against Vedrik, he almost died. Richie is very sorry that Ark did not come out with character, but his appearance was quite good. The heroine asks if the problem is that she has no experience and is young, but then says that she is sure that she is better than other kids from the academy. The ambitious lady asked the gentleman to believe in her, but he did not believe her words and said displeasedly that now she was behaving too arrogantly. Having laid out a cloth with different plants on the table, the man asked the child to name each of them if she was so confident in her knowledge. Richie was able to easily say the name of each of the plants: Dadali grass, arum, Behi flower, Hirat root, and dandelion. The doctor then asked her to identify the other herbs, and she replied that they were the salflower, stepa petunia, chrysanthemum, ziki leaf, and the herbal fruit mensi. Ark indignantly says that it cannot be that she knows the last flower, because on the entire continent there are only a couple of people who have seen it. She casually waved her hands to the sides and said that she had read about menzi in a book. When the doctor asked where it could be used, the girl replied that it grows in the spring on Mount Darafos and is useful for pain in the stomach and other areas. And when the gentleman asked what would happen if you mixed Sally and lily flowers, Richie said that the mixture was excellent for treating the flu at the beginning of the season, but it does not work well if the disease is advanced. The Viscount asked the young lady where she learned all this, if, as she said, she was only 13 and had never worked in a hospital. At first, she thought that if she told him that in a past life she had experience working in a clinic, the ducal doctor would not believe her. Then she simply declared that she was a genius, because in her opinion, this was the best answer that a 13-year-old was capable of. The duke's doctor laughed at the situation, then asked the little orphan why a genius like her would want to become his assistant. But suddenly, he embarrassedly covered his flushed face and coughed a couple of times, because she replied that she wanted to work for an even more brilliant genius. The man nevertheless told the girl that she could be his assistant, but threatened that if she ever disappointed him, she would immediately fly out of the palace. The main character was in no way afraid of her new mentor's warning, but modestly but calmly replied that she understood him. After that, Ark rose from his chair and headed towards the exit, asking his assistant to follow him as he would take her to his new chambers. The two maids immediately asked the master to entrust them with this task, but he said that he would do it himself, and not because he liked the girl. Suddenly, in the middle of the road, Viscount stopped in front of Richie and asked her what she liked. She didn't immediately understand what he meant, so she asked again. The doctor calmly repeated his question, and the young lady, remaining slightly perplexed, said that she liked sweets. After this, the man asked the servants if they had heard what his assistant said, ordering them to prepare sweets for her. He adds that although the girl is 13 years old, she is too skinny and short. The maids understood his order, and the duke's doctor continued to grumble dissatisfiedly that it would probably take a long time for Richie to grow up. Ark and the heroine walk along a beautiful corridor. The first one asks the young doctor to remember the way to his room, because he won't show her anymore. After some time, they reach the desired room, and the man modestly announced to his assistant that this room now belonged to her. The protagonist got an incredibly beautiful mansion, which has all the amenities and luxuries typical of the rich. There was also a certain woman in the room. The girl, admiringly turning her head in different directions, asked the mentor if he had really allocated her a room, to which he said that it was empty. Turning his attention to the smiling woman, the Viscount announced that her name was Janie, and she would take care of the girl. Janie greeted the baby warmly. The healer shook her maid's hand and suggested that she probably had a lot of responsibilities, and Ark said to contact her if you needed anything. Paying attention to the large and elegant wardrobe, Richie thought about how girls her age end up with such beautiful rooms. The protagonist found a lot of cute dresses in her closet. The man said that she could wear any of them, but for some reason the maid was wary. The gentleman, seriously folding his hands on his chest, said that he would throw them away anyway when the season ended. The girl smiled tenderly and shyly, thanked the doctor for his kindness. But he suddenly asked her not to misunderstand him, and explained that he was giving her these clothes because they no longer had another girl on the estate. He also asked her to remember that he gave her these dresses, which she would have thrown away anyway. The assistant says she realized he had thrown them away to her. The Viscount said that he would soon send her books that she should read, and asked the student to learn everything by tomorrow, to which she agreed. The man asked if she would ask how many books he was going to give her, to which she calmly said that it didn't matter to her, because she only needed to read it once to remember. Ark grinned, and then left without even saying goodbye, leaving the girl in a slight misunderstanding. As soon as the doctor left, the maid immediately told the young lady that there might be dozens of books there, and she was worried about how she would be able to read them all. But Richie, smiling cheerfully, said that she could handle it anyway, because she was a genius. Suddenly, Janie covered her mouth with her hands in admiration, and told the doctor that she looked very much like the Viscount as a child. She was surprised by this and asked again. The woman laughed and said that when the Duke's physician was her age, he told everyone that he was a genius. But then the main character asked the maid to tell her more when she asked why the master gave her his daughter's room. The girl asked if this room really belonged to his daughter, to which the maid replied that yes, and more precisely, his daughter had died long ago. It is believed that she died before the Viscount found her. This hurt his lordship greatly. The woman also says that the Duke advised the doctor not to lose hope and gave him this room on the estate so that he could come whenever he wanted. The protagonist understood what the mentor was thinking when he brought her here. She realized that in her previous life she did not know this about him. Janie smiled and told the young mistress that she would show her the estate later, then suggested that the young master's room was at the end of the hall. Looking out of her bedroom door, Richie asked if she meant Arian's heir, to which she replied yes. From a past life, the main character remembers that the Crown Duke was only 19, but he looked like he would fall off his feet at any moment. She wondered what he was like as a child, so she said that she had heard that he was in poor health. She agreed with this and added that he recently almost died, and the Viscount barely saved him. According to the woman, Duke Sirius died when his doctor was temporarily replaced. Ark couldn't let Arian die too, so he tried his best. The doctor thought that the sick heir's room was nearby and decided to visit her soon. She thinks he has a disease that can only be cured in childhood. The next day, Janie, having finished doing the young lady's hair, admired the fact that she now began to look like a noblewoman. Richie really was unrecognizable. A beautiful blue dress with pink elements paired with a cute hairstyle did the trick. The assistant said that if you embellish any person, he will look like a nobleman. But she, of course, has a genetically beautiful face and skin color. The maid again said admiringly that she was very surprised to watch the female version of the Viscount, but the girl thought that she seemed to be cursing her like that. The woman asked the little girl if she could get up and reminded her that it would soon be time to have lunch with the Duke's doctor. She asked her again indignantly. The servant said that this was true, and he would also check what she had learned from the books. She says most of the assistants failed and were expelled. But the girl suddenly said with a satisfied grin that this wouldn't happen to her because she had memorized everything thoroughly. Having led the young doctor into the corridor, Janie said that she would eagerly await her return, and she, rejoicing, walked towards the dining room. While snacking on different dishes, Ark asked his assistant about various medicinal herbs and their effects, as well as how to treat diseases. Richie answered his questions thoroughly and correctly. While the subordinate presented the master with the next dish, the Duke's doctor, rubbing his lips with a napkin, told his assistant that she seemed to be of some use. The young doctor considered his words funny and added that on the entire continent one could not find such a genius as her. The man said that she was very straightforward, but she objected that telling the truth is one of the principles of a doctor, and she is also very kind and sympathetic. The gentleman said that they are similar in character because he is also straightforward and kind, but the heroine imagined this because she thinks that this is not so. The Viscount also says that he noticed one detail even in their first meeting. She says what she thinks. Richie began to think about the fact that she and Ark are still different in their similarities, and apparently, this is one of these situations. The man says that he is very busy now, so he cannot stay in the palace forever, but he can return if something urgent happens. The protagonist listens to the words from the mentor that since she is his assistant, she will replace him in the palace and perform the duties of a doctor. He adds that this is an important job that cannot be done carelessly, but the girl says that if the doctor is stupid, then trouble cannot be avoided. Ark sighed and said that he was glad that she understood this, after which he promised to introduce her to Madame and Mr. Arian soon. But when he said that Baron Isidore and his son Vederick would arrive here today, the assistant became seriously wary. The heroine realizes that the heir and Vederick have been communicating since childhood, because if they were not so close, the servants would not go over to the latter so easily, and usually the inheritance takes several months. But suddenly, the young lady froze because she thought about whether it was right to settle everything so quickly, even if they were related to each other. At this time, the Viscount, who thought that the assistant had stopped eating because she wanted more, asked the servant to bring additional portions. After lunch, Janie, walking down the hallway with Richie, asked her how it went. She said that they promised to introduce her to the Duke and Duchess. Hearing this, the maid said that she was very lucky because Ark always taught others harshly, bringing them to tears, and only then introduced them to them. The woman also said that he seemed very pleased with his new assistant, and she interestedly asked if this was true. She objected that she was very talented, and Janie supported her, saying that she would become a good support for him, but a lot of things would fall on her. The little girl asked if there was so much to do on the front line, because during lunch she also heard about it. The servant admitted that instead of being on the front line, the Viscount headed to the continent to confirm the information and find his daughter. Janie told the girl that she would help him a lot. Richie thought that only the servants knew about Art's daughter, and it was not clear whether she died or could not be found. The main character realized that the goal of her life was to save Arian, but perhaps she would be able to find her mentor's missing daughter. But the young doctor thought that since she was planning such a thing, then this uncle should reduce his arrogance. She and the maid were walking along the bridge and just passed by children having fun who could be heard from below. One boy complained to another that he couldn't catch the ball. The protagonist suddenly froze when she heard that the boy called stupid no one else, but the heir Arian himself. She immediately ran in the opposite direction from the surprised maid, who asked her what happened. Meanwhile, one boy tells another that he needs to stand still, and if he doesn't learn to play, he will be laughed at. He apologized for this. This repentant young man indeed turned out to be 13-year-old Arian Iliard Sirius. Seeing this person on the balcony, the heroine was surprised that he was very handsome even in childhood. But she doesn't understand why the other boy is pointing it out to him. The manipulator told the little duke that if he ate too much, he would turn into a pig. This guy turned out to be 17-year-old Vederick. Handing the heir a strange bag, he told him to eat the pie that was inside when he felt hungry, but not to tell anyone about it. Richie, who was watching him, boiled with rage because he was talking some kind of nonsense. Janie excitedly asked the young mistress what had happened to her. The girl told the servant that she would go there, but she said that she might get confused in the huge palace. But the doctor convinced her that she remembered all the moves. At this time, the manipulator continues to push his pie on Arian, saying that this is his medicine, but suddenly the voice of a girl is heard, who says that this will not be enough for him. A young lady ran up to the boys, who added that the young duke was only 13, and he could not be the same height as a 17-year-old. The Viscount asked the stranger in bewilderment who she was, saying that he was seeing her here for the first time. But instead of answering, the young doctor asked him if he was Vederick, after which she said that the Baron was looking for him. Confusedly looking at the guest who had arrived, the boy decided that she was a noblewoman, since she had good manners and expensive clothes. Richie, trying not to laugh or blush at his lie, told the master that it seemed like something important had happened, and he needed to go now. Nevertheless, the boy headed towards the palace, putting his gift to his friend in his pocket, and wondering why his father had suddenly called him. As soon as he moved away, the main character cheerfully turned to Arian and asked if he was playing ball, to which he sheepishly replied that yes. The doctor happily said that she was also 13 years old, after which she invited him to play together. But the boy, with obvious embarrassment on his face, asked the young lady if she knew who he was. She said that she, of course, is aware of this, and knows that he is the young Duke Arian Iliad Sirius. Taking a racket and a ball in her hands, the girl invited her new friend to play tennis, because it seemed to her that he loved him. He agreed, and also picking up the racket, walked away and announced that he was making the first serve. Richie thought he would be a weak player, but was surprised when the boy threw the ball so hard that she couldn't even hit it. She was surprised by this, but smilingly stated that she would not lose next time. Throwing the ball away with all her strength, the main character adds with enthusiasm that she will win, because now he has no chance to hit it. But Arian, surprisingly, perfectly repelled her serves, remaining just as calm. The Pragonite woman and her sports rival threw the ball for a long time, not inferior to each other in strength. As a result, after a long fight, Richie tiredly fell to the ground, greedily gasping for air. She has no idea why this kid is so good. Helping his friend get up, the boy apologized to her, but she, thanking him for his help, asked what he was apologizing for. Embarrassment and some shame immediately appeared on the boy's face, and he said that he was asking for forgiveness for the fact that he was playing poorly. The lady asked what he was saying if she never hit back. He played so well. But Arian still continued to repeat his point. He says that this is not so. After all, Vedrick says otherwise, and he blames him for everything. With a dull gleam in his eyes, he added that the guy thought he was clueless and was causing trouble for everyone. Arian loves his cousin Vedrick. After his father's death, his mother was busy with work, and he was left alone because he was weak and constantly ill. And the only one who stayed with him was his cousin. Going into a friend's room, the young manipulator suggested that he no longer attend fencing classes. But the heir says that Jeffrey said that he can do it, to which he said that the teacher is lying, and he will weaken if he continues to study. His words turned out to be prophetic, and soon the young duke felt ill. Later, when Arian was just eating, Vedrick ordered him not to eat much because he would get fat. The child said that on the contrary, Viscount Farrellman told him to eat more, but he asked him to believe him and not the doctor because he was worried about him. However, by placing a finger to his lips, the cousin reminds him that what he is telling him is a secret. The other boy asked why, puzzled. The young duke was embarrassed by what his friend said. The doctor finds out that he disobeyed him. He will forbid them to see each other, and they will no longer be able to play together. 6-year-old Arian was very afraid of this, so he agreed with him because he did not want to lose his only friend. He ate little and refused to train so as not to overexert himself, and so, in a situation where adults had absolutely no time for him, the boy gradually weakened. Still on the court where the heroine was playing tennis with the unfortunate young man, she called out to him to say something. Richie invites him to play catch again later, hinting that it's not worth playing with Wederick. He replied that he was bad at it and she would be bored. But the girl asked what kind of nonsense he was talking about and said that he plays very well. The doctor thinks about why the baby continues to talk like that. The heir asked if she really thought so, to which the young lady resolutely replied that she was not lying. The protagonist thought that the situation was not as serious as she thought. The boy was thin, but his muscles were in good condition, and she just needed to help him grow up. Arian hesitated to answer, but then decided to ask his friend who she was. She was horrified that she still had not introduced herself. Bowing elegantly, the doctor said that her name was Richie Estelle, and she was the Viscount's new assistant, but the heir allowed him to call her simply Richie. Having heard from the girl what function she performed in the palace, the boy immediately said that if she was a doctor's assistant, she would soon leave. However, the main character stated that she is not like the previous assistants, because she is smarter and superior to her predecessors in everything. Then she said something that interested the little duke. The girl asks the gentleman to promise her something. Richie asks him to trust and listen to her no matter what, if she is not driven away and remains in the estate. He outrageously asked why he would suddenly do this, to which the young lady said that it was because doctors never lie. With a beaming smile, she promised the boy that she would definitely help him become healthy again. A slight confusion appeared on Arian's face. A slight blush appeared on his cheeks, and he himself did not utter a word. After this, the doctor's assistant asked the young gentleman if he wouldn't mind having lunch with her to celebrate their acquaintance. Before he had time to answer anything, the heroine noticed a man with Wederick passing by upstairs. The girl called out to the guy, but he didn't hear her, which is why she assumed that he was already leaving for home. The heir looked sadly at his departing friend and said that he actually promised him to have lunch together. Richie turned the young man's attention to herself, asking if he wouldn't mind eating with her. She thinks that this way they will become friends in an instant. He nevertheless agreed. After some time, the girl found herself in a luxurious office, which included expensive furniture, paintings, and even a fireplace. Looking around the room in surprise, it seemed very strange to her that the nobles seemed to eat in their private chambers. While carving up a steak with a knife, the Crown Duke told his friend that he didn't know she lived in the opposite room. She smiled sweetly and said that this was so, and the Viscount helped her a lot with this. Noticing that there were a lot of books on the floor, the young lady asked the gentleman if he liked to read. He replied that he used to love doing this. Then Richie asked if he was reading now. Arian said that he had already stopped, because his cousin said that it would give him a headache, and if he got sick, he would start to annoy Art's assistants. The assistant was very impressed by this, and she asked what the Viscount said to this. She thinks that those assistants do not deserve to be called doctors. Rubbing his lips with a napkin, the boy says that those medical assistants didn't stay long anyway, so he didn't tell anyone. Tasting the meat, the protagonist remembers that as soon as they met, it seemed to her that he was cautious with her, and now she understood why. The young doctor noticed that the gentleman had hardly eaten his lunch. She asked why he didn't eat, and whether it was because he didn't like the dish. When the child replied that Vederick told him that if he ate a lot, he would get fat, the main character was overcome with rage and thought that if she heard that name again, she would become furious. She explained to the boy that he was very thin, so he needed to eat more, because besides, he was still growing. But the young duke again said that his cousin told him that if he gets fat, then all the people will laugh. Jumping up from her seat, Richie said that this would not happen, and she, the doctor, knew better about this, so he should eat well and not listen to Wederick. The kid was embarrassed and objected that his brother was so concerned about his health. But at that moment, the girl assured that she cared and worried about him much more than he did. The young lady told her friend that he might not believe her, but she was smart and honest, and most importantly, she would care about him more than anyone else in the world. Guided by the fact that she returned to the past in order to save Arian from death, she asked the heir to always remember this. After a short silence, he asked Richie if she would leave if he grew up healthy. She didn't understand the question the first time and asked again. Still, she replied that she had not thought about this yet, but said that if he was healthy, he would no longer need her. The young duke asked if she was smart and did a good job, wouldn't she continue to work with the duke's family? The girl recalled that Viscount Farrelman was the chief attending physician, but the heir unexpectedly asked what would happen if he left to look for his daughter. Richie, embarrassed by the abruptly changed atmosphere, said with a smile that she would think about it later, because he was still far from coming of age. Presenting a fork with a piece of meat, she told Arian that if he wanted to feel better, he needed to eat more. The lady was about to feed her friend herself, so she asked him to say, "Ah." He agreed with a smile and swallowed a piece. The little duke is sure that he will never forget the words of this girl. The man came to Ark's office and handed him a document containing information about 2 girls registered in shelters in Urbia. The doctor read the paper and praised the efforts of his subordinate, a young man with pink hair and blue eyes named Dill. The doctor continued to carefully peer at the letter, and Dill asked the mentor if he would go and see the lady today. He replied that it was possible because he needed to find his biological daughter. A wave of sad memories about his beloved washed over the Viscount. He thought that if he had been next to her then, everything would have been different. Then, standing at the pier, he anxiously asked his wife Sione if she would mind going alone, to which she replied that no, because she was going to her parents. The man continued to say how worried he was, but the girl advised him to concentrate on his task and reminded him that her birth was not soon. The lady said that she would return when the holiday was over, but he promised to come for her after work. Sione told her husband that he was very funny. Squeezing her lover's hands tightly, thus expressing her boundless love, she said that she understood him and would wait for him. Arka's pregnant wife went by ship to Labely Island to celebrate her mother's birthday. However, while crossing the territory of the Duke's half-brother, Baron Isidor, she gave birth. The child, like the mother, were in critical condition. But the Baron, who had good medical knowledge, rushed to their aid in time. Thanks to his efforts, the baby was born healthy. It turned out to be a girl with green eyes and blonde hair like her mother. She was a beautiful child. Immediately after giving birth, Sione boarded the ship with her newborn, as she no longer wanted to stay with Isidor and disturb him. But unfortunately, something terrible happened to her, and that was the last time anyone saw her. Immediately after this, Ark found his wife in an unexpected place on the continent, and cried out loudly at what he saw. The doctor tells his subordinate that the child's body has not been found, but no matter what it takes, he will find her, even if he has to search the whole world. Deal asked the mentor if the information was true that his daughter had green eyes and blonde hair at birth. The man confidently replied that this was true, because the Baron himself, who was present at the birth, said so. In a sad voice, the Viscount added that this tragedy occurred because he incorrectly determined the timing of the birth, and if there had not been a person there who knew medicine, he would have lost his child. The servant responded to his words with a simple, "I see," then said that he had heard that he had hired a new assistant. Ark asked what was surprising about this, since he changes assistants like gloves, but Dill reminded that this time he allocated a whole room for the girl. The doctor grinned and said it was because he hoped she would stick around. He also added that Richie's stay should be comfortable so that she doesn't go anywhere. The subordinate did not understand his words and asked again. Then the doctor explained that his new assistant was very smart, and if she left him, then with her knowledge she could easily open a pharmacy. He added that if she worked here, he would have time to search for his daughter. Deal told Ark that for the first time he liked his assistant. The Viscount started talking about what was not at all like that, but the servant said that this was already clear. The doctor decided that it was time to introduce the assistant to the Duke and Duchess. After a while, throwing a bunch of papers on the table, he tells the main character that they will soon meet with the Duchess and the young master. Then he ordered the girl to memorize the treatment diary he had brought. Gina was stunned by this, but Richie calmly agreed. After this, the man left, asking the assistant not to be late for the meeting. The maid was surprised at how strict the doctor was, although they only had 3 days left. But the girl said that there is good news. Not everyone is given access to the treatment diary, which means the Viscount trusts her. The maid left to prepare the lady a snack, and she stayed to look at the papers, where she learned that the Duchess was suffering from migraines and abdominal pain. She thought that if all the symptoms were described here, then stress must be the cause. She also determined that the doctor's prescription was written correctly. Richie began to think about why a woman would die in 6 years if she did not have any serious abnormalities. The heroine realized that everything was much more serious. As for Arian's symptoms, he has periodic pain in his teeth, stomach, and head for no reason. Sometimes he gets so sick that he develops a fever. The lady realized that it doesn't matter what you prescribe. If the reason is not clear, then everything is useless. She assumed that Ark was too busy to find out the reasons. The protagonist decided that before the Duchess and her son died, she must find out the causes of their illnesses. Sometime later, finding himself in the ducal castle, the Viscount presents Her Highness with his new assistant. She bowed and introduced herself. Arian smiled and blushed when he saw an acquaintance, and the important woman said that she was very amazed by this. Isabel Cecilia Sirius told the doctor that they say that he constantly hires assistants, but always fires them before introducing him to her. Suddenly, the woman furrowed her brow in confusion and told the girl that she was very small, but told her to sit down on the chair. Having modestly sat down, the main character thought that the rumors about the Duchess were true. She really had a cold character. The young lady thought that compared to her peers, Isabel looked young at 30 years old, but her expression was not very kind. The Viscount started talking about how his assistant, although only 13 years old, had outstanding abilities. He added that she looked like him at his age. He also had all the medical knowledge then. The little girl nodded and said that she was like that too. With a displeased expression on her face, the woman asked if it was true, and the boy just laughed quietly. Looking at the nobles, Richie thought that in order to find out about their diseases, she would need access to the Viscount's laboratory, and she realized that first she had to prove herself to the Duchess. When the man said that his new assistant had outstanding abilities in medicine, Her Highness said that she was sure that this was so. He repeated that this girl is very reliable, and he knows this for sure because he understands people. The girl mockingly asked if that was why he fired so many before her, to which Ark said that he simply hated fools. The doctor asked Isabella if anything was bothering her in terms of her health, to which she said that everything was as usual. Her headaches did not subside, and her stomach hurt when she drank milk. Turning his gaze to the girl, the mentor asked her what she would prescribe as a doctor in such a case. Richie told the Duchess that based on her medical history and treatment, she believes her body is susceptible to cold. She also says that she would leave what the Viscount prescribed for her, but would add a decoction of acis herb, zekron petals, dockley roots, and give up milk. The Duchess and Arian looked at the heroine in surprise. Ark asked what to do if the migraine continued, and she replied that she would treat with Cerilon. The doctor asked the young master what he thought, and he replied that it sounded good. The man asked if he was eating and exercising properly. Arian answered with a smile that yes, and this greatly amazed and upset the protagonist because he lied. Art asked his assistant what she would do if the heir fainted, and she said that she would act according to the slogan of Zebulon Medicine. She said that if the symptoms were not known, she would contact the Viscount immediately. The mentor said that her train of thought was correct. The Duke's doctor announced to Isabella and Arian that Richie would be their temporary doctor, and if anything happened, He asked that they notify him immediately. The lady was very outraged by this, and she asked how he could allow some girl to treat her for 3 whole days. He told her ladyship that she need not worry, because he would give the new girl a thorough check until he was sure that everything would be fine. However, the Duchess stopped objecting when Ark started talking about how, as soon as his assistant's abilities were confirmed, he would like to visit the Urbia region. The main character began to think about whether he would go there in order to search for his daughter, because it would take a very long time to get to this place. The Duchess sighed heavily and said that if this was all because of his daughter, then she could not keep him here. But the next moment, the woman frowned irritably and added that his sudden decision confused her. The doctor asks Miss Sirius to think and let him know if she does not want him to leave, because he will remain in the palace as long as she pleases. The young lady also decided to say a few words. She tells the Duchess that if given a chance, she will prove that she is a reliable doctor. She, although she lowered her head in irritation, promised that she would think about it and told the doctors that they could go. After meeting the Duchess, Arian, walking down the corridor with Richie, tells her that Viscount Farrellman really liked her. She answered in the spirit of, "I wish he didn't like me," and said that she didn't lie about her success. Peering into the heir's face, the heroine thought that he was very similar to Her Highness. The protagonist thinks that they both look weak, but this makes them look better. She calls it attractive morbidity. The doctor remembers that she forgot to say something. She notifies the boy that she has placed bells in his room and Isabella's, which are connected to hers. She asks the young duke to call her if he feels unwell, to which he smilingly agreed. Then the young man admits that his mother was a little doubtful, but did not mean anything bad. The girl replied that it was better this way than without any doubt at all, and she was sure that this woman would recognize her. Arian asked if she thought that because she was a good doctor, to which she replied that she did. He laughed and said that it couldn't be otherwise. He then smiled sweetly and admitted that if it was true, he would be watching her. The main character, not forgetting that she needed this baby to become healthy, asked him to eat all of his dinner today. Arriving in her room and plopping down on her bed, Richie asked herself how she could quickly gain access to the Viscount's laboratory. She suggests that he will go to Urbia to look for his daughter. Suddenly, the protagonist thought about creating her own paternity test for the first time. The girl remembers that it will be invented in 6 years, and instead of 10 steps, it will include 7, and the identification of results will speed up to 3 days. The young doctor understands that she only read about it in the newspaper, but never tried to repeat it, but she approximately remembers the components. She convinced herself that she could do it, and it would be great if she could do it before the Viscount left, and she just needed the laboratory. Richie took on this job, to which she devoted the rest of her day. It quickly became dark outside, and the moon rose in the sky. Having with difficulty mixed all the necessary elements without making mistakes, the experimenter, anxiously peering at the book, began to puzzle over what was missing. Suddenly she noticed a loud alarm sound and a red light in her room. The young doctor realized that this message was from the Duchess, who became very ill. Instantly rushing to the victim, the young lady took Her Highness by the hand. She is worried because such an important person needs urgent help. Holding the unfortunate woman by the hand, the assistant used magic, which turned out to be very effective in this situation. After this, the Duchess was able to rise and touch her head. The girl asked if she felt better. She was in no hurry to answer, but was very surprised when the Viscount's assistant took her hand again. The little girl explained that in such a situation, a direct influx of magic is more effective, and the Viscount is a man, so he cannot resort to such a method. The victim thanked her for her help, and Richie asked how she was feeling. She replied that it was good, but she had a headache. The young doctor asked if she had a throbbing pain, or as usual, only in her temples. The woman was surprised by this, and asked the assistant where she learned these details about her symptoms, to which she said that she had read the treatment diary. The Duchess admitted that her pain was more throbbing, after which the young doctor advised her to take one medicine, which she did. After drinking the syrup, Her Highness again turned her attention to the girl and asked her if she was going to leave, and she replied that she would still hold her hand, because such treatment would help her sleep. The heroine again took the mistress's palm and began to treat her using healing magic. Lying down on the bed with relief, Isabella said that it had been a long time since anyone had held her hand while she slept. The young doctor also admitted that what she is doing now is also new to her. The woman asked what exactly. She admitted with a gentle smile on her face that it was unusual for her to hold someone's hand until he fell asleep, because she grew up in an orphanage. Miss Sirius asked the girl if she knew what her parents looked like, to which the girl replied that she did not. Lighting up her face with a pleasant, dreamy smile, She also added that if she had a family, there would be more such moments in her life. The Duchess did not answer anything, but some kind of surprise and thoughtfulness was clearly visible on her face. Still, she closed her eyes and thanked the doctor for his work, saying that she would probably be able to sleep well today, which she had not had for a long time. Very quickly, Her Highness began to snore, and the main character tenderly wished her good night. The next morning, the maid tells Richie, who is busy with her affairs, that Isabella told her thank you and sent her desserts as a thank you. Looking at the tray with a bunch of sweets, the assistant screamed and asked if it was too much, and Janie conveyed the Duchess's words that if she didn't like the desserts, they would be returned to the kitchen and the cooks would be fired. But the girl suddenly fell silent because she noticed a letter from the mistress on the tray among the delicacies. She reads it. The Duchess writes that thanks to her, she slept very well and feels cheerful in the morning. Another woman wrote that the fact that she sent her desserts was a trifle, but she was told that the baby loved them, so she hired the best pastry chef in the empire. Finally, the mistress wished the young lady a good day, but Richie, thanking her for her generosity, was embarrassed because she could not eat so much sweets. However, suddenly she is surprised, as if remembering something or coming up with some idea. The main character came to visit the young heir, who interestedly asked her if his mother had sent her desserts. She said it was, and she helped her sleep last night. Then the boy asked if she succeeded. Noticing something strange in the young gentleman's behavior, the doctor asked what was wrong, and he admitted that, unlike his mother, he did not sleep well today. The girl said that this might be because he doesn't exercise enough and is rarely in the sun, and she offered to help him today by rescheduling his walk for tomorrow. Then she asked the little duke to give her his hand. He first asked why this was, but immediately fulfilled his friend's request. Feeling something was wrong, the doctor was very surprised and excitedly asked Arian if he had a headache. But she soon realized that the unfortunate man had a fever, and for some reason he was silent all the time. The young man, whose face immediately turned red, said that his mother told him not to show his weakness in front of others. She stated that talking about her pain does not mean showing her weakness, especially since she is his attending physician, and she needs to say this. The young doctor was overcome with concern for her friend, because she saw that his complexion was very unhealthy, which meant he was in great pain. The heroine lifted the poor fellow from the chair and dragged him to the bed in order to quickly help him. Soon the patient, who had developed a high fever, found himself in bed, and Richie began rummaging through the nightstands in search of the necessary medicine. The heir's temperature rose so high that he himself did not notice how he fell asleep. Time passed quickly, and the Duchy of Sirius plunged into a quiet, clear night. A few hours later, the young heir woke up to find his girlfriend giving him a cooling cloth on his forehead. Still not fully recovered from the high fever, the boy asked the doctor in a quiet voice why she thought he got sick. The doctor replied that, to be honest, she did not know. And, as in the case of the Duchess, she did not know the name of the disease. Then the boy said that he would soon feel better, and she could go. She jumped up from her seat and asked what he was saying, and the point was not that he would feel better, but that he was coming to terms with the pain, and the more he considered this to be the norm for himself, the worse it became for him. But the unfortunate man unexpectedly objected that he could not be cured anyway. Grabbing Arian's hands, Richie promised that she would try her best to cure him, because she herself is a very good doctor. She persistently, with a burning desire to help the heir, asked him to trust her. He, with a descending blush on his face, simply looked into her eyes, unable to utter even a few words. Some time passed, and the main character accidentally fell asleep on the heir's bed, and he, apparently, no longer wanted to sleep. Getting out of bed and removing the cooling bandage, he realized that the pain was gone and his complexion began to look completely healthy. Noticing how sweetly his girlfriend fell asleep next to him, he smiled sweetly and thanked her out loud for everything. The next day, coming to the protagonist's room, Arian thanked her for the treatment and said that he was already feeling better. She laughed and said that, of course, because no one else treated him like her. The young master asked if she was tired after spending the whole night. Then the heroine invited him to go outside today and exercise, as he promised her, but he suddenly became embarrassed, as if he didn't want to. Richie immediately turned on the actress and pretended that she was very tired, taking care of him all night and spending a lot of her strength and magic on it. The heir, believing in his friend's tiredness, immediately changed his mind and agreed to go to the exercises, which made her very happy, and she asked if it was true. The young man said yes, and for her sake he was going there, because he didn't want her to feel tired because of him. In her mind, the doctor was surprised at this rarity. The Viscount's assistant told her friend that there was a way to make him sleep well, and without her troubles at night. The child asked what kind of method this was, but the doctor suddenly came closer to him and asked if he would listen to her. She held out her little finger to the young duke, telling him that he needed to promise that he would do what she had in mind. At first, he hesitated with his decision. Still, he gave his friend his word, but indicating that his promise would be temporary. This secret turned out to be a simple run, which Arian did, squeezing all the juices out of himself, and Richie just watched him and told him not to stop. She cheerfully waved her hand at him, supporting him in this way, and shouted that he needed to run one more lap because he was doing well. Having heard support from his devoted fan, the boy, having gained strength, continued to run in a circle, dripping with sweat. The doctor thought that if you train hard, your appetite will increase, and during puberty, sleep and food are the most important things. She told her friend to run 2 more laps, and then they would go out to dinner. Time passed quickly, and when the sun was already setting outside, the children came to the young duke's office, where a sumptuous lunch had already been prepared. The young man asked if he could eat all the food, to which the girl said that he needed to receive nutrients depending on the load. He said that he understood everything, after which he began to eat the delicious dishes with pleasure. Richie thought about how this was similar to how she cared for her younger siblings in the orphanage. Unexpectedly, she told the young master that after he eats, they will read a book. This interested the boy, and he asked her about it. The main character explained that he needed to get back to studying as soon as possible, but if he suddenly wanted to sleep, he should tell her. However, having started reading, the doctor was surprised that Arian still did not want to sleep, although she thought that training and a heavy book would lull him to sleep. She is very angry with the realization that she thought of giving a book to someone who loves to read. This is like indulging the devil. Then the assistant herself said that it was time to take a nap and promised to help the patient fall asleep with the help of magic. She took the young duke's hand and closed her eyes to use her power, but asked her friend to also close his eyes so that she could do it. But he suddenly asked if it was convenient for her to work like that. The girl even lost her task from such an unexpected question. Arian tells Richie that she can sit next to him, because his bed is already big, and she is probably very tired. The protagonist immediately thought that there was no subtext here, but for her, lying in the same bed together was a little strange. In the end, she replied that everything was fine and would just wait until he fell asleep and left. He agreed with this, after which he lay down on the bed. Suddenly, the heroine also felt that she was very exhausted because she wakes up early in the mornings, and in the evenings she is busy developing a paternity test, so she cannot get a good night's sleep. She hunched over the air, wanting to take a little nap too. But then she began to plunge into her mysterious vision. Opening her eyes, Richie somehow found herself in her adult body. She lies in bed with a certain man who calls her, covering her with a blanket. She is confused by the fact that she finds herself in a bed in which she feels, oddly enough, very warm, and also some stranger is holding her hand. The girl tried to look the young man in the face, but she, surprisingly, could not do this, since she simply could not see. The man started talking about how she told him that she would not lie, because she is the smartest and most honest in his circle, and only she always thinks about him. After stroking the heroine's hair, he also said that for him, every word she said was true. With a smile, the stranger asked if he could leave her, because he was not so stupid. The main character was stunned by the fact that she didn't know what kind of person he was, couldn't see his face, and couldn't even move. Suddenly, Richie wakes up from his vision, jumping out of bed with a surprised face. She looked around and realized that she was still in the young master's room. Looking at how Arian held her palm, and he himself was fast asleep, she realized that everything that had just happened was just a dream. The Viscount, having heard that his assistant was asking him for Aesop petals, answered categorically no. She creates a paternity test for the heroine, and for the last stage, she needs these petals of this plant. The girl was upset when she heard the refusal, although she understands that Aesop is a poisonous plant, so it is unlikely that he will so easily agree to give it to her. Severely approaching the assistant, he said that she had only 2 options: turn around and leave his office, or explain why she needed them. With a terrifying frown, Ark added that no matter what she chose, the result would not change. Looking sadly at her mentor, Richie thought that it must be difficult for him to trust a child who had spent so little time in the palace. Handing the man a stack of papers, she asked if he could look at her report first, because then he would understand why she needed this plant. He agreed, but warned that this still would not change his decision. But the man was very surprised when he realized that the document was written about a study on a method to simplify the paternity test procedure. The girl said that she was brewing a potion, to which all that remained was to add Aesop, and if she succeeded, the paternity test procedure would speed up to 4 days. The Viscount, covering his mouth with his hand in surprise, said in a trembling voice that this was simply incredible. The lady also explained that all that remained was to determine the exact number of Aesop's petals, and if he did not believe her, then he could continue the experiment himself. Placing the document on the table, the man calmly asked his assistant how she came up with this idea. She smilingly replied that she was just smart, thinking that she still shouldn't tell him about her reincarnation. She admitted to her mentor that she started this in order to help him, and asked her to take it as gratitude for the fact that he allocated her a room. The doctor suddenly looked away from his assistant in embarrassment, and the heroine clenched her hands into fists, hoping that she would agree to give her a poisonous plant. Realizing that her pleas were not entirely convincing, the protagonist bowed politely and said that she would still really like to complete the experiment. Thinking about whether she should try to convince Ark later, she went, slippingly saying that if she had a suitable laboratory, the result would be better. Later, the Duke's doctor walked down the corridor, looking at his assistant's research on speeding up paternity tests. After reading about the experiment in more detail, he realized how seriously the girl approached her task. The man believes that Richie is completely different from all his assistants who were before. She is the youngest and the smartest among them, and she also does not mock anyone or behave willfully. He grinned when he realized that this genius child looked a lot like him. Passing by the chorus of the heroine, whose door was slightly open, the Viscount thought that he should think about how his feet carried him to his daughter's room. He approached the door and leaned against it to see what his assistant was doing now. The young doctor, sitting on the bed and surrounded by various books, studied various medical materials, simultaneously working with potions. Continuing to walk along the corridor, the doctor remembers how the assistant said that it would be better if she had her own laboratory, to which he agrees. But then on Ark's way, he meets the maid Janie, who happily greets him. He said that she appeared at the right time, because he wanted to ask her something, if she had noticed anything suspicious in Richie's behavior. The woman said that she didn't notice anything suspicious, but one day something unusual happened, and the doctor asked what it was. The maid says that she has long wanted to tell him that the young lady has her own notebook, which she always carries with her. The servant informs that on the day when she spied on the young master, she made her entries in this diary. Taking out a certain notebook with a white cover, Jenny cheerfully said that just in case, she made a copy of the notebook with those notes. Taking the copy in his hands, the Viscount thought it was her diary of treatment. He saw that the introduction of magic and all the details were carefully recorded, and there was nothing dangerous here. Suddenly the Duke's doctor turned to the maid, and with a gentle smile said that she no longer had to monitor his new assistant. He asked the maid to bring Richie dessert and tell him that this was a sign of his gratitude and an apology for his mistrust. He explained that it was not surprising that he was following her. He was forced to do so. The doctor added that he gave his daughter's room to her just like that. But suddenly, Janie said that this was not the case. Recently, the Duchess had already sent her sweets. The gentleman asked for more details, and the servant said that Isabella had recently called her in because of a migraine and was probably satisfied with the treatment. Ark said that now he understood why the lady was asking about Richie, which surprised the maid. Then he asked the woman to find out what else the girl liked. She reminded him that he could ask about it directly, but the doctor said that then his assistant might think that he was very pleased with her. Finally, with a blush appearing on his cheeks, he asked Janie not to tell the Duchess about this and let it remain their secret. The next day, the protagonist and the young master went hiking in the mountains. They were surrounded by green foliage and warm sun rays. The girl asked her friend to walk a little more, but he was so exhausted from this walk that he could not stop breathing and stop sweating. The lady asked him if everything was all right with him, and he, sitting down on a stump, did not give a clear and intelligible answer. Richie thought it was a little difficult for Arian, but he could clearly get to the middle of the mountain. She is sure that he has become much stronger and appears healthier. Guided by the fact that they were surrounded by a magnificent landscape, the girl suggested stopping and resting here, with which 2 knights helped them by spreading a blanket on the grass and preparing snacks in a basket. The young doctor, sitting down with the boy on a tree stump, agreed with his opinion that this place was very cozy. The young man admitted that it is difficult for him to walk in the sun, but he feels good and feels light in his body. She said that, as he saw, she was right. Looking at her patient, Richie thought that every feature of him was beautiful, and he would be very handsome when he grew up. These thoughts made the little girl laugh, and the perplexed heir asked why she was laughing. She said she was just glad he came out for a walk. Arian said that this was because Vederick told him that there were a lot of cherry trees here, and the girl, hearing this, offered to pick a lot of berries. The young lady rose to her feet, saying that she would go and pick a cherry, and her friend, also jumping up, said that he would go with her. Turning to the little duke, she warned him that he might slip, so he needed to be more careful. But suddenly, the girl saw a terrifying picture. A large, scary brown snake was crawling closer and closer to the young man's leg. The next moment, something unpredictable happens. The beast, bearing its sharp, poisonous fangs, attacked Arian. Significantly frightened, the main character rushed to her friend so that her hat flew off her head to try to save him from this situation. She pushed the oblivious Arian aside, while the poisonous snake continued to quickly crawl towards them, eager to attack. Unfortunately, the animal manages to carry out its plan, and its poisoned fangs pierce the skin of the protagonist. Richie screamed loudly and clenched her teeth from hellish pain, and the heir was terrified, and not understanding what was happening, he continued to call her, but she did not seem to hear him and lost consciousness. Suddenly, the protagonist, as if nothing had happened, stands in front of the window, peering into the winter landscape. A tall man comes up to her from behind, and covering her with a robe, says that she might catch a cold, because it's the middle of winter, and even her hair is wet. The lady accepted the young man's advances and greeted him. The boyfriend, surprisingly, turned out to be Arian, who looks as mature as Richie. The girl calmly said that she was used to it, to which the Duke said that if it was a burden to her, he would do it himself. The gentleman, stroking his girlfriend's hair, adds that he is ready to do anything. She just needs to tell her about it. Suddenly, His Highness asked the doctor if she was tired after taking a bath, but she suddenly blushed and asked what he was saying. Gently touching a strand of the heroine's hair with his lips, he coquettishly asked her if strange thoughts had entered her head. The protagonist simply looked at his face in bewilderment, blushing on her cheeks. Then she indifferently said that she didn't think about anything like that, to which the man said that he, on the contrary, thought. Richie attacked her friend's chest, childishly beating her with her fists, asking what kind of speech he was talking about, but he stood calmly and smiled. Suddenly, Arian grabbed the doctor's palms, and with a sad expression on his face, asked her not to beat him in the chest, because she could beat her own hands, but it would be better to hit his face if she wanted to. With sadness appearing in his eyes, he explained that if she suffered even a little, he would be very scared. Taking the girl into his arms, the young man explained that it was enough for him to feel the earth disappear from under her feet once. Frowning his eyebrows, the man admitted that he had never felt as hateful as he did that time, because he already knew then that Richie was the whole universe for him. The main character looked perplexedly into the man's face and noticed drops dripping down. She thought he was crying. The girl gradually began to gain consciousness, and the first thing she saw was an excited little Arian running up to her and calling her. When the fog in her eyes completely cleared, she saw the young Duke crying bitterly, bending over her face. The sleepy victim asked the boy if it was him, and he, still sobbing, asked his friend if she was okay. Clearing her throat, the doctor asked the young man if everything was okay with him, to which he replied that yes, and reminded that she had not regained consciousness for 2 days. Richie said that if a snake had bitten him, it would have been impossible to cure him, but she only needed to take any medicine, so it was good that she was bitten. Arian asked her for forgiveness, because this happened because he was weak, but the lady said that it was not his fault, and she felt much better. The little Duke, approaching the heroine, asked her to promise that she would never do that again. Although he held the unfortunate woman's hand, she replied that she could not do that, because for her his health was her main priority. He wanted to object, but suddenly the Viscount entered the room and asked his assistant what would happen if she came across a poisonous snake. The man said displeasedly that in that case she would have died on the spot. The Duchess appeared behind him, her face expressing regret. The protagonist said that she was sure that she had stumbled upon an Urbonian python, and in any case, they would be able to cure her. Ark said that it really was simple. The victim was approached by Mrs. Isabella, who told her thank you for saving her son and asked her to accept her deepest apologies. The heroine replied that everything was fine with her now, and if she now lived in a shelter and not in a palace, she would not have received such treatment. Her Highness looked at the girl with a bit of sadness on her face, and the doctor frowned, but they both remained silent. In the end, the man suggested that everyone leave Richie's room, since everything was okay, and let her rest. The young Duke agreed with this idea, but the little girl admitted to her mentor that she had one request for him, and he immediately said that if it was about sleeping pills, then it was already lying next to her. Richie thought that the Viscount took good care of her as a patient, which means he is an excellent doctor, but she herself is not sure what happened then. After drinking a sleeping pill and going to bed, she remembered that Vederick had said that the mountain was full of cherries. Now she has bad associations with this name. Slowly falling asleep, the girl also remembered that she had just dreamed about something, but she didn't remember anything. Thanks to Viscount's medications, the heroine quickly recovered. She did not have the opportunity to study, but she was able to gain the trust of the people in the estate. Recently, Ark again told the Duchess and Arion that he would leave his assistant here, while he himself went to Erbia in search of his daughter. This time, Her Highness and her son easily agreed, without even arguing about anything. The young master completely trusted the main character and wanted to spend every day with her. And moreover, Isabella, having laid out the whole table for the girl with a variety of desserts, said that these sweets were simply delicious and asked the little girl to try the best of them. She, enjoying the cake, agreed and said that the products were amazing. The woman added that many chefs tried to create something unusual. Suddenly, the Duchess asks the girl to choose the dessert that she liked best, and she will hire the chef who prepared it. The doctor was embarrassed and said that these cooks already have work, to which Miss Sirius promised to pay them all double. Richie thought she was forgetting that Isabella had a lot of money. She is shocked that in a past life, Vederick turned this estate into ruins. Her Highness, while drinking tea, asked her young interlocutor if she thought that she was too frivolous about hiring. The doctor said that was not the point, and asked whether other abilities of cooks, besides desserts, were also important. The lady, putting down the cup, replied that no. The lady once again stated that their business is to create delicious desserts, and the protagonist realized that it seemed like she couldn't convince her at all. She thought with an embarrassed smile that something was wrong here, and whether everything ended well, because she was simply bitten by a snake. When Isabella said that she was fine thanks to her, Richie advised adding dandelion flower milk to the water before taking a bath. Another girl says that thanks to this, the skin on her face will become better and softer, and the Viscount did not recommend this to Her Highness before because it is related to cosmetology. The woman thanked her. However, Madame asked the young doctor to take care not only of her, but also of Arion. She replied that it was her duty, and the boy was quickly getting better thanks to basic exercises, which he performed strictly according to plan. After that, the Duchess lowered her gaze and said that because of that incident with the snake, she was very embarrassed, because she was the one who had to protect her son. Miss Sirius told the young doctor that as a child, her baby was often sick, but she was always too busy to take care of him. Because of this, he was left alone with his problems for a long time. The Duchess admitted that she was convinced that she could not give up, because this would weaken the status of her son, but this only widened the gap between them. But then Richie, with a beaming smile, told the woman that she shouldn't worry and would take good care of Arion. Isabella smiled and said that although she and her son were the same age, for some reason she felt that she could be relied upon. She then asked the heroine if the Viscount had given her these dresses, saying that they were beautiful but old-fashioned. She replied that they belonged to his daughter. When the little girl said that he gave them to her because there was no one to wear them, the Duchess became very angry and said that men were completely insensitive. With a serious expression on her face, the mistress promises to give Janie a list of all the tailors in the capital so that the orphan can choose from the clothes that she likes. Richie said that compared to what she wore before, these dresses were very good, so she was grateful for everything they gave her, but Madame angrily reminded that these dresses were going to be thrown away. She jumped up and said that she could not silently watch such treatment of a child, so she asked the lady to list everything she liked. She, although feeling embarrassed by the woman's unexpectedly changed mood, agreed. Quite a bit of time has passed since the main character found herself in the Duke's palace, but her shock has not yet passed. Richie was quietly reading a book, but a maid entered her room and asked her if she liked dinner, to which she replied that she did. Then Janie asked about her dress, and the girl said that she liked everything. But the subordinate asked the lady to pay attention to the huge stacks of papers in her room and added that the Duchess had recently sent her a list of tailors. The young doctor explained that this was all due to the fact that Isabella and the Viscount had different tastes. The servant asked the young mistress if she needed anything else for a comfortable life, but she said no. The woman then asked if she needed any more books. The assistant smiled and said that she had enough of everything, and there was a lot to see in the Duke's castle. Janie asked if she needed friends her age and if she was lonely, and she replied that no, but if this happens, then let it be a smart young man of about 19 years old, because her peers are too childish. But then Richie felt something was wrong and sternly asked the maid what happened and where she got so many questions from. When the maid admitted that the whole point was that Art asked her to ask her what she liked, the girl asked why. The woman suggested that it seemed that the doctor wanted to apologize to her for doubting her and thank her. The doctor asked why he didn't ask her directly, and Janie said that his character would not allow him to do this, which made the orphan laugh. But suddenly the main character came to an unexpected guess. If she, in the opinion of the mentor, is doing a good job, then she can ask for whatever she wants. Then she calmly started talking about how, in fact, there was one thing that she really wanted. The servant happily asked which one it was. Richie said that if she had her own laboratory, she could process different herbs there and could do more experiments. The way she asked for this looked sweet and graceful, but in fact, the girl really wants to be allowed to use the Viscount's laboratory. Hearing that the protagonist wants to be given a laboratory for research, the Viscount was slightly indignant. He reminded the maid that the Duchess had actually said to buy a lot of dresses, but she said that the girl didn't seem to care about dresses. The man asked if that was all, and Janie added that this was also her reaction to the lady's request, but she also said that she would like to have a smart friend who was about 19 years old. As soon as the maid said that the assistant wanted a 19-year-old friend, Ark's gaze immediately fell on Dill, who was also in his office. The doctor asked the guy how old he was, and he replied that he was 18. The Viscount, already considering him as a candidate, said that he, of course, was not a genius, but smart. He was very embarrassed, but thanked his friend for such a compliment. The doctor asked if he would respond to his precious compliment with just one thank you, and he said exactly that. Ark, who had already begun to formulate a train of thought, asked Dill if he would have anything to do if he went to Erbia. The guy, starting to sweat with excitement, said that it would be so, but then asked about his vacation. The doctor, as the main villain, stated that if the Duchess orders the tailor to sew Richie's dresses, then he will give her Delia and the laboratory as a gift. The Viscount's subordinate fell into despair because his work was increased, and he had planned his vacation so perfectly. Nevertheless, the man promised to give the girl the best laboratory and ordered the young man to be a good friend to her so that she would not be lonely. He, thinking that he still had no choice, agreed to become a mentor. But then the guy said that Richie could use his laboratory, but the man objected that her own would be better and more beautiful. The pink-haired one reminded the boss that this was not his estate, but the Duke's, but he asked him to quickly go and get permission for the laboratory. At this time, Richie, in the company of Arian, spends time in the garden, eating various sweets. The boy noticed that his friend was thinking deeply about something. In fact, the doctor is thinking about why there is still no news about the laboratory. She assumes that there simply are no premises. Suddenly, a man appeared behind the main character and politely greeted her. It turned out to be a subordinate of the Viscount, who introduced himself to the little girl as Dill Mulliken. The guy explained that Ark sent him to become her friend. Hearing this, the protagonist grabbed her head, thinking about what would happen to her laboratory. Richie asked the guy if the Viscount had sent her a new friend as a gift. He said that this was true, and he would also be responsible for the construction of the research room. The guy's last words really struck the girl. But suddenly, the assistant had a question and asked if she could use the mentor's laboratory whenever she wanted. Deal relayed with a smile the man's words that her laboratory would be more spacious, brighter, and more stylish. She was very happy about this and said that she would not refuse, thinking that although she did not know why it was needed, she had no reason to refuse. The young man asked the young lady if she wanted to build more greenhouses, because there was enough space for this, to which the lady said that it would be great. The pink-haired one said that in that case, they would discuss the details later. The doctor asked him to try hard on it, to which he agreed, because it was his job. The doctor's wife was embarrassed when Dill said that he was actually on vacation, but he was sent here because she said that she needed a smart friend of about 19. But despite this, he was in a good mood. The young man bowed politely to the young lady and said that they would see each other later, to which she agreed. Thinking about how she would soon have her own research room and greenhouse, Richie began to smile. Remembering how in her previous life she worked as a doctor in a modest hospital, she realizes that she never even dreamed of this. Without even noticing something strange, the little girl began to dream of having a huge table and laboratory equipment in her own laboratory. But suddenly, she notices that the atmosphere around Arian has somehow changed. The lady looked at her friend's face, which turned out to be very gloomy. He simply looked at her with a cold gaze without saying a word. Richie was a little scared and asked if he was okay, but he didn't answer her, continuing to frown. The doctor's wife wanted to touch the young duke's forehead to check if he had a fever, but he took her hand away from him and asked if she needed such a friend. His girlfriend said not really, but a friend who is smarter and older is better anyway. Arian pouted even more and asked why she needed a 19-year-old friend. The heroine, thinking that until she was reborn, she was only thinking about age, admitted that she believed that it would be easier for them to communicate this way. The young gentleman, whose mood began to feel sad and sorrowful, asked the doctor if she liked the guy. The protagonist was slightly surprised by this question, and she thought about the fact that she had never met Dill before. Grabbing his friend's hand, the boy asked Richie if she wanted to communicate with him because she was too young. Then he desperately asked his friend if she considered him a friend at all. The main character screamed in surprise and asked what kind of nonsense he was talking about. She says it's not like that at all. Removing her hand, the lady explained to the baby that he was a nobleman, the heir of the Sirius family, and she was a simple girl, so they could not be friends. After these words, the baby immediately dropped, and Richie realized that she had upset him with her expression. To cheer up the unfortunate man, she admitted that the relationship between them was much closer. The girl says these words because Veteric said that he will come here soon, so she needs to gain even more trust from Arian. The little heir blushed when the doctor added that their relationship was as strong as family ties. His ears and cheeks turned even redder when he asked the doctor if things would remain like this in the future. She, feeding her friend strawberries, replied that, of course, everything would be like that. The boy happily ate her treat. Sitting back down at the table, the protagonist thought that at such moments she felt like Arian's pupil. Chewing the berry, the heir offendedly admitted that he also wanted to become older and smarter. These words of his made the girl very happy. He then sheepishly promised his girlfriend that even though he was not 19, he would still act as if he had reached that age. Looking at Arian, Richie thought that although she had never liked children before, she thought he was quite cute. The doctor advised him to eat well, exercise regularly, and go to bed on time, and also about exercise. He would need someone more experienced than her. He said that he didn't need anyone, but the girl objected that the nights would help him become stronger. The young man was upset that Richie advised him to hire a teacher to improve his thinking. He sadly said that he had more fun studying with her, but the young lady cheerfully replied that he could read books and have lunch with her. He agreed with this. 2 days have passed, and the Viscount, while his things are being loaded into the carriage, tells the Duchess, her son and his assistant, that he will definitely return in 3 months. Isabella smiled at him, asked him to take care of himself, and said that she hoped that this time he would find his daughter. The woman then laughed and added that Richie would be with them. Arian, hugging his friend, wished the doctor a good journey. Art grinned and thought that if these two had not changed their minds regarding his assistant, they would never have let him go. The main character, with a gentle smile, also wished the mentor a good journey and asked him to be careful on the road. He, indignant that the girl was already saying goodbye to him, said that she actually needed to accompany him to the port. The man added that this is because she is his assistant, like Dill, so they will go with him and at the same time buy the things necessary for the laboratory. The pink-haired man smilingly told the girl that it seemed that the gentleman wanted to give her a gift, so he asked her to quickly go with them to the carriage. The doctor explained that the 3 of them would go shopping, since he did not trust his subordinate, because he would definitely buy the wrong thing. Turning to her friend, the doctor said goodbye to him and said that they would see each other soon. Arian agreed with her and wished her to be careful. The young lady stepped towards the exit, but her friend gazed after her as if not wanting to let her go. Having thought about something, the boy suddenly loudly called out to his friend to tell her something. The protagonist turned cheerfully, looked at him, and asked what was the matter. Unexpectedly, the heir said that he believed in her. The doctor did not immediately understand what this meant. After some time, the carriage with the ducal doctors arrived in the sunny city, namely to the market, where there were a small number of people. Peering at the cityscape, the main character thinks that this is the first time she has gone somewhere since she ended up in the Duke's palace. But she is very amused by the thought that she is going shopping to buy laboratory equipment. But then the Viscount coughed demonstratively, thus asking to pay attention to him. When the lady did so, he inquired about her dress. She cheerfully said that this outfit was one of those that Isabella gave her, and she even gave her this gorgeous hairpin. But the man said that the dress was terrible, because there was no decoration on it at all. The assistant sadly admitted that she chose the design herself, after which the doctor said that if you look closely, it is neat, but the hairpin is too flashy. The young lady embarrassedly asked if he really thought so, because it seemed to her that she was the most beautiful. Suddenly, Art changed his mind and said that on the other hand, colored jewelry goes well with sober clothes. The doctor's carriage continued to drive along the city streets, but suddenly, Richie, looking out the window, noticed several knights on the road who had detained someone. Deal, who also noticed this, suggested that they had detained a tramp who seemed to be using forbidden magic. The young doctor was interested in this, and the guy explained that such people are not afraid to arbitrarily resort to magic and experiments. He added that such magic always has a side effect. When the girl asked what would happen to the tramp, the young man said that he could find out in court. The orphan got excited and began to sweat when the pink-haired one said that, depending on the severity of the crime, a death sentence could be imposed. The main character understands that just as for forbidden magic, this is also true for forbidden medical experiments. Continuing to look out the window, she thought that she did not know that magic was used for something other than healing. The girl does not understand why wanderers like this detainee need her. Suddenly, Richie saw something so amazing outside the window that she instantly moved closer to the glass to get a better look. She realized that the one whom the knights detained turned out to be the same old woman who brought her back to the past. That day, when they talked in the dungeon, the protagonist did not try to hide her identity, because she thought that she would die anyway and it would not matter. Suddenly, Richie thought that she had never heard of magic that could turn back time, and the old woman was probably using forbidden magic on her. Continuing to watch the mysterious sorceress, she thinks that she needs to find out what really happened. However, when the little girl wanted to look at the old woman again, she discovered that she and the knights had disappeared somewhere without a trace. Sadly leaning against the window, she remembers the words of Dill, who said that forbidden magic always has a side effect. She suggested that in her case there was probably one too, but which one was unknown. The doctor was unable to think about anything further, as she was feeling sleepy. The main character is immersed in her vision, where she, as an adult version of herself, addresses my Lord Arian with some embarrassment. She admits to the man that she enjoyed spending time with him as a child, without thinking about anything, and that's all she wanted to say. However, the girl does not understand why she was so embarrassed when she said this. The Duke, looking romantically into his friend's eyes, first asked if it was true, and then agreed with her. Suddenly, he put a strawberry in the lady's palm and asked her to feed him. Richie, not understanding anything, asked the gentleman again. He reminded him that she always fed him. The doctor embarrassedly said that she only did this as a child. Bringing Richie's hand with the strawberry to his lips, Arian recalled that she told him that she liked the way they spent time as children. The young man passionately took a bite of the berry, adding that they always held hands. After eating the strawberries, the Duke smiled and asked his friend, calling her very smart Richie, not to say that she had already forgotten about it. Suddenly, the real Richie opens her eyes in bewilderment as a man persistently calls her. Still in the carriage, which has already stopped, she sees Dill next to her, who notified her that they had arrived at their destination. She asked him again in surprise, and the guy repeated that they had arrived at a laboratory equipment store. The lady understood and sheepishly scratched her head. She, thanking the assistant for helping her get out of the carriage and blushing like a tomato, thought about how she managed to fall asleep in the first place. While going to the store, Richie realizes that this has been happening to her more and more often lately, and every time she wakes up, she cannot remember her dream. Meanwhile, at the training ground of Duke Sirius's knights, the military were practicing their sword skills. Joaquin Liam Kishington, captain of the Knights of Sirius, asked my lord in surprise what brought him here. Arian, holding a wooden sword in his hands, replied that he wanted to learn fencing. The old man did not expect to hear this so much that he asked him again. Joaquin sighed, remembering that before, when the child was younger, he would come to him and bring him a toy sword to play with. But now, everything is different. The captain reminded the boy that he said that if you study fencing, you can get hurt, and it is difficult, so he left training, but he said that he had changed his mind. Also, remembering his girlfriend, he resolutely said that he wanted to become tall and healthy, so he needed to exercise. The man agreed with the young master, and said that if he said so, he would support him and choose a good teacher for him. The grandfather called out to a certain guy with red hair named Jekyll, who was practicing swordsmanship not far from them. The young man, wiping the sweat that was dripping from his face in streams, responded. Seeing the young master, the knight greeted and introduced himself as Jigel Kais. The captain said that he was the best knight training new recruits. However, Joaquin secretly told the boy that this guy had a slightly difficult approach to learning due to his disgusting character. Arian stated that this was not a problem, and since he came later than the others, he would try even harder. Jigel and the captain looked at my lord with enthusiasm, as if they had long wanted to hear these words from him. Soon the knight began to teach the young heir his first lesson, while the old man watched them on the sidelines. Watching the boy learn to wield a sword, Joaquin thought that he was very similar to the previous duke. The man believes that he has a wonderful character, but he is not sure whether he will have any outstanding abilities, like previous generations. Although even when this young man is in pain, he is silent. Stopping to take a breath, Arian thought that his sword was simply heavy, but he hated being considered a child. He thought about Richie and decided that he should try harder for her. At that moment, the girl was looking at test tubes in a laboratory store, but suddenly she sneezed. Ark asked the assistant if she had a cold, but she said no. The lady thought that someone was remembering her. Deal, making a list of what needed to be purchased for the laboratory, asked the doctors if they needed to take test tubes. At first, the girl said that we needed to have all sizes of test tubes, and then the Viscount said that yes, and all sizes might be needed. Then the guy asked about syringes, and the doctor replied that those from Berea County were the most hygienic, after which the doctor said the same thing. The pink-haired young man laughed at the fact that two brown-haired men were telling him the same thing, then admitted that he seemed to be on a family shopping trip. Hearing this, Richie and Ark immediately declared that their hair color was the most common, which surprised the guy very much, because they even fight for the same reason. A few hours later, two doctors and their servant arrived at the pier, where a passenger ship was already preparing to sail. Deal said that they would soon buy everything they needed, and there was still a lot of time before departure, but the Viscount objected that this was because they had made a list. Then the main character turned to the man and thanked him for the laboratory, the props, and for planning everything for her. The lady also promises to show him good research results soon. She then added that she hoped that this time he would be able to find his daughter and would not need a paternity test. The man smiled. He was very pleased with the support of his assistant. But suddenly, he doubted when he wanted to ask her something. Still, with a blush appearing on his face, the man asked the girl if she liked his gift more than Isabella's dress. Deal suggested to the little girl that his mentor meant whether she liked his purchases for the laboratory more than the Duchess's gift. Then the gentleman himself said that his surprise was much better than dresses and cakes, to which she sheepishly agreed. A malicious laugh burst out from the doctor, and he declared that only a doctor could understand another doctor. The guy asked Richie to just agree with what he said. The heroine, still not understanding what was happening, thanked her mentor again. Soon Richie and the servant said goodbye to the Viscount, after which the latter boarded the ship and left. When evening came, the protagonist was already preparing to go to bed, thinking about what a strange farewell to Ark it was. But then there was a knock on her room. A maid entered the room and notified the lady that Arian's muscles were very sore. This alarmed the girl and slightly upset her. But when she heard that the boy felt bad because he was taking fencing lessons, she cried out in displeasure. When the lady came to the heir, he told her that she herself had said that he could not do only running. She agreed with this, but meant to take up fencing when he grows up. These words angered the master a little, and he objected that he was not small at all, and moreover, Jekyll, his teacher, praised him. Arian also added that the knight said that he had excellent posture and would learn quickly, but the boy himself was not sure whether to believe this. Richie asked why not, and he replied that Vedrick called him weak and slow, and the others only praised him because he was a young duke. The girl said that this was not true at all, and his motor nerves were very good. For example, she asked a friend to remember how they played tennis together. The lady admits that she tried very hard, but in the end lost. He sighed and blushed, and then said that if she said so, he would believe it. The doctor said that this was very good, and that now he needed to go to bed, and she would be next to him until he fell asleep. She told her friend that she had fun today. She got out into the city for the first time in a long time, and then she dined with her mentor, servant, and coachman. The lady asked Arian why he was smiling, and he said that it was just like that. Then he asked her to have dinner with him tomorrow, just the two of them. She thought about it and asked if he had training tomorrow, and when the heir replied that yes, and early in the morning, Richie advised him to fall asleep early. The young man looked at his friend sadly. Turning his gaze thoughtfully to the ceiling, he admitted that sometimes he wakes up and thinks that he is about to die. The unfortunate man said that in the past, he was getting worse and worse every day, and he also couldn't stand the dark. However, the young duke said that when Richie is next to him, who looks after him at night, he does not mind the dark at all. The main character smiled tenderly at him and promised that she would protect him from things worse than the dark. The boy grinned and blushed. He also promised his friend that he would become strong enough to protect her. Leaving the office, the doctor thought that if Arian protected her by growing up healthy, then the rebellion would not take place, which means she would not be detained or killed. But suddenly, she noticed that a strange alarm sound was coming from her room, the door of which was slightly open. But when the protagonist saw the red light from the room, which came from the emergency warning light, she immediately realized that it was the mistress. The girl rushed with all her might towards Isabella's mansion, wondering when the alarm in her room had even started ringing. She ran so fast that she began to sweat profusely. The only thing that scared her was the thought that she might not make it in time. The lady remembers that in her previous life, the Duchess died only after 6 years, but if she is late, it can happen much faster. Almost reaching the woman's bedroom, she heard her desperate coughing. Thanks to this, the doctor realized that she was not late, and she still had time. Without any ceremony, the main character rushed into the room and loudly, alarmedly called out to Her Highness. Isabella, who had previously coughed blood into a handkerchief, excitedly turned her head towards the arriving assistant. It was impossible to describe the horror that Richie felt when she saw the blood on the Duchess's scarf. When the confused doctor approached Miss and hesitantly said that she had just seen blood on her handkerchief, she quickly hid the evidence behind her back. The girl began to worry because this symptom was not in the woman's medical record. She asked if she had coughed up blood. She did not answer, and the heroine directly asked the ruler if she had been hiding her illness all this time. Desperately grabbing the lady's sleeve, Isabella asked her not to tell the Viscount about this. When the unfortunate woman calmed down a little and sat down on the bed, Richie asked why she didn't tell anyone about this, because if you hide your illness, doctors can write out the wrong prescription. She said that she was aware of this, but there was one but. Ark left the post of chief physician 7 years ago. The Duchess says that when her husband started vomiting blood, he said it was very bad. She asked him to find a new doctor before resigning, but Ark told her that he could not stay any longer because he had to find his daughter. Her Highness said that they still changed the chief physician, but when she wanted to tell what happened in the end, she sadly fell silent. The main character also lowered her extinguished gaze to the floor, because she understands that after the death of the Duke, her mentor returned to work. Isabella says that she understands Ark's problems, but still needs him, but if the doctor finds out about her illness, he will definitely quit again. With all her strength, she told the lady that if her son could live a healthy and happy life, it would not matter if she died early. The doctor was silent, but the Duchess continued to say that the Viscount had saved Arion many times, and she would be pleased if he continued to grow in peace. Then the lady asked about what had just happened. She asked the little girl if she would tell anyone about her coughing up blood. She resolutely answered that no, and for this the woman thanked the young medical genius. Taking a deep breath, the main character admitted that she was very lucky to find out about everything today. She then promised Isabella that she would change the order in her prescription, but warned that it would be difficult to prescribe the right medicine now, since she did not yet understand the cause of coughing up blood. Taking the ruler's bloody handkerchief, the girl said that she would take it for research. Miss Sirius smiled kindly at the young doctor, thanked her, and said that she was glad to see her here, but asked her to keep everything a secret. Richie said that she should thank her for allowing her to use the laboratory, and that she even built a greenhouse with herbs for her. She asked if the Viscount had made a better laboratory for her than his own, to which the doctor said yes, and today he bought her various equipment. The Duchess said that Ark has only money on his mind, so it's easy for him to throw it away, but this confused the protagonist because she also gives her gifts. Still, the baby told the woman that in the future she should definitely talk about her symptoms. She added that she will always be with the Duchess and asks her to let her know when symptoms begin to appear again. She asked in amazement if she was being honest. The heroine laughed and said that she was an orphan and she still had nowhere to go, but to herself, she thought that she would be with them until Arion grew up. Isabella looked warmly into the child's eyes and smiled, then thanked her for her help. It was just morning in the duchy, and Arion was already on his feet. He was training hard to wield a sword with his teacher. Before starting the next training match, Jekyll warned the kid that he would now hit with the left. He understood him and was already preparing to fight back, but suddenly the man swung his sword not to the left, as promised, but to the right. The boy was frightened by such a surprise, but dodged it in time and was not injured. The young man told the teacher that he had acted very badly, but he said that life is full of surprises, and you need to be prepared for anything. He advises the young master not to believe everything that others tell him, because the world is full of liars. But the student said his friend Richie never lies. The man objected that this was because she was a doctor, and doctors cannot lie to be trusted. Then Jekyll told the boy that one day he will also have to lie, and he will also rule the lands, so he needs to learn to hide his emotions. He recommended that the kid lie as he did if he really wants to get something. These words confused and interested him. Arian said that he didn't want to lie, but the teacher said that in the future, he would change his mind when he really wanted something. The heir began to think about this and decided that the only thing he wanted was to be with Richie. He finally said that he understood everything, after which he prepared to begin the next training battle. The young man also prepared his sword, but suddenly, the boy asked him to start his studies a little later, starting the next day. When he asked why he was asking this, the little duke replied that it was because Uncle Roman and Vederick would probably arrive tomorrow. Jikel thoughtfully scratched his head and agreed with his condition, saying that they had not seen each other for a long time. Taking advantage of the fact that the enemy was distracted and lost in his thoughts, Arian quickly pointed his sword at him, causing him to almost move his horses. Then the heir, without removing the sword from the throat of the stunned guy, smiled sweetly and asked if he was quick to grasp. The teacher realized that he had been dealt with and raised his hands, surprised that he didn't even have time to blink an eye when he lied and took advantage of it, although he had just said that he didn't want to lie. At this time, the main character, being in her new laboratory, looks at some papers while Deal puts her things around the room. Passing by the girl, the guy thinks that the research room has just been completed, and she is already working hard, even asking him to leave quickly. Richie, reading a certain document, thinks that the current physical condition of the lady is unlikely to be the cause of coughing up blood, which means something is wrong. But then she noticed something strange. A reaction occurred in the Petri dish in which she combined the silica plant and Isabella's blood. The girl looked at the result of the experiment in bewilderment, remembering that this herb is often used to neutralize Fallopium multiflorum. It quickly dawned on the protagonist that it was all about the poison. The Duchess did not have an ordinary illness, but someone was deliberately poisoning her. She reasons that the poison of the hippie flower usually causes headaches and stomach pain. Often, people do not realize that they have a slight poisoning, and it is likely that some criminal is slowly and secretly killing the Duke's wife. The doctor guesses that if this has become a threat to Isabella's life, it means that the Duchess has been using poison for a long time, and for a long time, at least once every 2 months. Suddenly, the young lady again noticed some changes in her Petri dish. The concentration of the poison had decreased. Having examined the reaction, the girl determined that the criminal was using a new type of poison. She's not sure who it could be, but he's not close. If you think logically, the people who benefit most from the Duchess's death are Baron Isidor and Wederick. Richie thought that detoxification would be enough, but if the mistress said that she suspected her younger brother, she would lose all his trust. The lady decides to find compelling evidence so that the Baron cannot justify himself. At this time, the heir's mother is having lunch with a certain white-bearded man who asks her how she's been doing lately, calling her sister. She modestly replied that it was wonderful, and the man laughed and said that she was always so cold and taciturn in this regard. This is Baron Roman Jacques Isidor. When his sister asked him where Vederick was, he replied that he was playing with Arian, then asked Isabella if she was okay. The lady replied that it's hard to say that everything is fine with her, but she's getting used to it. He sighed upon hearing her words. The brother asked Isabella if she had told Viscount Farrellman about all the symptoms of her illness, and she said no. The man praised her and added that if the doctor left, she would have a hard time. With an incomprehensible smile, the gentleman said that she needed to protect her son too. Roman, seeing that the drink in his sister's cup was different from what he had, asked what she was drinking. She, raising the cup to herself, said that it was a gift for her, but he could not try it because it was only for women. The lady said that the Viscount's assistant gave it to her, and the Baron asked in surprise whether this was the girl they were talking about and who had not yet been kicked out. The Duchess smiled and said that this was exactly so and that this girl was very smart. The woman remembered how Richie recently came to her and handed her a bag of herbs, saying that this was her new medicine that needed to be taken regularly. Handing Isabella her gift, the doctor also asked her to tell others that it was tea, and whoever asked her for it, not to give it to anyone. The heroine says that if some annoying guest keeps asking questions about this tea, then you just need to say that this drink is for women. Her Highness remembered one more thing. The doctor told her that if someone found out what kind of medicine it was, then it would quickly become clear to everyone what she was sick with. The man, meanwhile, tells his sister that she liked the Viscount's new assistant, and on this occasion he wants to meet her once. The gentleman asked the lady if she would mind if he invited Richie to his place for dinner, but she first asked if he wanted to do it today. Isabella remembers a girl who asked if she could have dinner with her today and tomorrow to see if her medicine worked on her. As a result, she tells her brother that it won't work out for him because she already has an appointment with her. This confused him, but he didn't stop and asked if he could organize dinner with her tomorrow, and his sister replied that she wouldn't be able to do it tomorrow either. The Baron was indignant and reminded the lady that he had come to her for only 3 days. Noticing his persistence, the Duchess asked Roman if he wanted to tell her something, and if so, then let him do it now. He immediately fell silent, but surprisingly, clenched his teeth in displeasure out of anger. Vederick asks Arion why he started fencing if he told him not to. He asked if he didn't care about his words. The heir calmly replied that thanks to these activities he felt much better than before, so there was nothing to worry about. The Baron's son asked his friend to stop drinking so much, otherwise he might get fat, but he said that he would not stop, because he exercises a lot. When the little Duke said that Richie had given him all this advice, the young man asked if he was talking about that new assistant of Dr. Farrellman. He recalls that he was fooled by her appearance and believed that she was a noblewoman. The antagonist decides that he needs to find out what this girl is up to. When Vederick told a friend that he wanted to meet with his doctor, he immediately indignantly said that he was not allowed. He asked in surprise why, and the young Duke answered briefly and clearly, all because he was 17 years old. The young man did not understand what was so frightening about this, which is what he asked the boy about. Arion repeated that it was unacceptable for him to meet his beloved girlfriend. Walking closer to the heir, the Viscount told his friend that he had to obey him, so he needed to be a good brother and arrange a meeting for them. The young Duke was very indignant when the guy said that he was his cousin and friend, but for some reason he did not allow him to meet his cutie. Nevertheless, the future ruler stated that even so, he was against his meeting with her. He explained that Richie is the Viscount's assistant, however. He signed an agreement with the family, and therefore she is now his, and he has the right to refuse him to meet her. The antagonist was surprised at how aggressive he was when he reminded his brother that they were actually related, but he said that no, because he was not serious. But then a certain plan appears in the guy's head, which is why a creepy smile appeared on his face. He asks the boy if he wants to impress her. Leaning against a relative's chair, the young man with a suspicious grin said that if this was the whole point, then he should lose excess fat. He also said that becoming an adult does not mean becoming fat, because he is larger than him. The heir asked in surprise if this was true. Then the provocateur asked his friend what he would do if his girlfriend was disappointed in him and left. He was so scared when he heard this that his face immediately changed. All his self-confidence has disappeared. He does not understand what his brother wants to convey to him. Suddenly, Vederick declares that, as he said, that girl is his assistant, of course, that she is cunning to please him, but he is objective and can give him advice. The manipulator tells Arion to just eat the apples he gave him instead of food, and he will look cooler if he listens to him. The boy sadly lowered his head. Horror was visible in his gaze. He timidly agreed with him. He praised him, calling him well done, but putting a finger to his lips reminded him that this was their secret. Some time later, the main character and the Duchess had lunch with Arion at the same table, which was filled with various delicious dishes. The woman asked the young doctor if she liked lunch, to which she said yes, and even very much. The lady thanked the lady for fulfilling her request, which was to temporarily exclude seafood from the diet. Richie thinks hippie flowers taste like fish, so they can be added to seafood. She created a menu for this family if they go somewhere. Her Highness noticed that her son did not eat anything at all, and, very worried about him, asked if he had an appetite. The boy, excitedly putting the cutlery on the table, apologized to his mother and friend and said that he could not eat. The protagonist was completely shocked, and the mother calmly asked the child what was wrong with him and if anything hurt him. He, swallowing nervously and sweating, replied that no, and that's not the point. The girl suddenly felt uneasy, and she began to think about what had suddenly happened to him. Looking at her embarrassed friend, she thinks that in the evening he played Vederick, and perhaps he again told him some nonsense. Richie took a deep breath because she realized that she would have to inspire her friend again. She is a little upset that she cannot find a common language with the ducal family. Night has fallen, and Deal, in the greenhouse watering the plants, thinks about how a young lady can command such a specialist like him. Earlier, Richie asked him if the Viscount sent him to deal with the laboratory and the greenhouse, instead of being friends. He replied that everything was so, after which the girl asked if he was her servant, to which the guy said that they, in fact, were both commoners. The doctor smilingly asked him if they should be friends, and if he could follow her orders, his friend. Dill frankly admitted that she could, but she suddenly asked how she could be familiar with a man who was 5 years older than her. But the next moment she answered her own question. Of course she can. The guy was amused by how quickly his girlfriend adapted. When the little girl asked her subordinate to plant cypress in her greenhouse, the pink-haired one asked her with interest. Deal objected that these seeds were difficult to obtain, but she said that in the Arca trade union it was very easy to do so. The young man agreed with her. The doctor added that the cypress is very fragrant, and if you take care of it, it will smell even stronger, but she asked to keep her request a secret. Having taken out some kind of toy bunny, she also asked a friend to hang this toy on the key to the greenhouse, and then leave it on the table in her room, after which she did not lock the room for a while. The girl gave the artifact to the guy, asking him to immediately inform her if the key was lost, but he asked in bewilderment what it was all for. The main character smiled sincerely and said that he would find out about everything later. Having scrolled through this whole situation in his head, Dill wondered in his thoughts. What was the Viscount's assistant thinking about? But he thinks that it doesn't look like she's doing anything useless, and first he'll just follow the order and see what happens. The young man grinned briefly and wondered if it was strange that a certain anticipation had appeared in him. When night fell, the protagonist, coming into Arian's bedroom, asked him what he talked about today with Vederick. He did not answer immediately, but hesitated a little. The lady asked if it was so difficult for him to answer, and the boy admitted that it was a man's secret. She asked if he was that close to him, and the Duke replied that he was actually his cousin and only friend. Richie asked if she could meet him, saying that she also wanted to play with them, but her friend strictly said that he was against it. The young Duke admitted that it was because he called her cutie. The doctor asked what was wrong with this guy's taste, and he added that she liked older people. The doctor said that she simply didn't like children, and the boy, displeasedly folding his arms across his chest, said that he was against it anyway. He assumes that she has become close to Dill and is now thinking of meeting Vederick. Because of this, he called his girlfriend husband, which in children's language means the female version of a womanizer. The girl was greatly discouraged by this. The boy sighed and said that they say it's difficult to be with someone who is greedy for men. Surprised, Richie asked him who taught him these words in the first place. He replied that Jekyll helped him with this. The main character immediately guessed that this was his fencing teacher, who had a complex character. But the heir, smiling tenderly, said that it was not scary, and if she was next to him, then it didn't matter what her preferences were. Extending his palm to his friend, Arian said that now it was time for him to sleep. The doctor thought that now she needed to give him her hand as if nothing had happened. She put her palm on top of the boy's in a friendly manner, which made him very happy. But suddenly she asked her friend who was more valuable to him, Vederick or her. She then rephrased her question by asking who he trusted more. This confused the heir, and he fell silent, and the Viscount's assistant said that she had decided to become the only one for him. She asked if he had forgotten her promise that she would always take care of him. The boy grinned and replied that he trusted her, since she told him that she would never lie. Then Richie said that in this case, someone he trusts should be by his side. The lady said that although Vederick is his cousin, he is also the adopted son of the Baron, and he is the owner of this palace, and only his decisions are the most important. The main character persistently explained that all his desires and thoughts are the law, and he does not need to listen to those who say otherwise. Arian smiled and said that Jekyll told him the same thing, and she said that it would be okay, because he is a young duke. In the end, the boy told his friend that he understood and would remember her words. The doctor smiled and said that it was time for him to sleep until the morning. He agreed with her and wished her good night. The little girl wished him the same. Suddenly, the heroine finds herself at some kind of reception where rich ladies and gentlemen are present. Everyone was happy, dancing, and celebrating. She doesn't understand what she, a commoner, is doing at this holiday and how she ended up here in the first place. The girl also has no idea why she is wearing such a stunning dress and why her appearance is so different from the appearance of a 13-year-old girl. Richie walked past the dance floor and came to the balcony, where a familiar person was already waiting for her. Adult Arian told the lady that she was late, and then asked if she had a good time dancing with the poor crown prince. Holding his girlfriend close to him, the man asked if this predatory wolf cub held her by the waist while dancing. He leaned closer to her ear and asked in a whisper where they had touched each other. Walking away a little, he told the blushing lady that although she had been famous from an early age, he had not imagined that she would hunt for the crown prince. The Duke smiled and told his friend that it would not matter how vicious she was if she continued to be with him. Having embraced the doctor, he reminded her that the most important thing is that she listen to him. Suddenly, Richie noticed a sound coming from behind them and wondered why it had become so noisy in the hall and if something had happened. At this moment, the main character's sleep is interrupted, and she wakes up from someone persistently and incessantly calling her, but she instantly cheered up when she realized that a familiar male voice was shouting to her that if she had already woken up, then she should quickly open her door. Going out into the corridor, the doctor saw Dill. She asked him what was wrong. He said with horror on his face that, as she had said, the key to the greenhouse was missing. The doctor immediately said with a smile that they needed to go there as quickly as possible, and she needed to hurry up and get dressed. But suddenly she stopped and remembered that she was actually having some kind of nightmare, although she didn't feel anything bad, so she didn't care about it. Walking through the greenhouse, the protagonist praised the guy for the fact that the plants had grown quickly and he was very talented. He said he was trying his best. She laughed and jokingly said that it seemed that her slave had become proud, which greatly embarrassed him. When the girl said that he was good at following the orders of a genius, so he needed to be more confident, Dill laughed and thought that he should discuss this with the Viscount. Then the lady spoke about how the next request he had to fulfill for her was to hide among the bags and wait for the criminal to come. The young man asked if he really needed to hide there, and she said yes, because criminals always return to the scene of the crime. The doctor said that the thief would return at dusk, when the smell and aroma of the kipurcha would dissipate. She says she will give Dill a feedback ring. Having given this ring to her friend, she tells him to keep an eye on everything here, and if someone appears, then call her immediately, and she will come running and grab the criminal alive. Sometime later, the main character, Her Highness and her son, were walking together in the ducal garden. The woman said that she had not been on a walk for a long time, so after it she felt great. The girl said she was lucky. The trio continued to walk, but the doctor still didn't understand why she was standing between them and walking hand in hand with everyone. Isabella asked her son if he was sad because Vedrick left, to which he said no, and they agreed to go for a ride together in the evening. The mother asked if they were going to ride horses, and the boy happily said yes, and Jekyll taught him to ride a horse. The lady, not believing the child the first time, asked him again if he really knew how to ride a horse. The young man said that he is doing well, and today he will try to win. Richie was happy about this and said that he had a great attitude. Judging by the expression on Her Highness's face, her son's good mood also made her happy. She grinned and admitted that he had a great attitude. The doctor sighed and said sadly that she would like to see this, and Arian admitted that he did not tell her about this before because he was not sure of his victory, but she promised that even if she didn't watch, she would root for him, and in general, she would always, time after time, support only him. The heir was shy, which was noticeable by the blush on his cheeks, and said that he liked it and asked her to even root for him. The doctor decided to take her friend's hand in order to support him even more, but at that moment, a signal suddenly came on her ring in the form of a bright light. The lady immediately realized that this was a call from Dill, who had probably already been waiting for her in the greenhouse and caught the arrival of the criminal. She told the Duchess that she had recently taken up growing kipurch and invited her to go with her to the greenhouse and see what she agreed to. But when the trio came closer to the room, they noticed that the door to it was open, but the protagonist says that she is sure that she locked the door. Having abruptly and unexpectedly burst into the greenhouse, Richie loudly asked the person who had entered who he was. Before her eyes, the girl saw a certain servant who was so frightened by her sudden appearance that she dropped the fruit, which she picked herself. The Duchess and Arian also entered the room, but they did not fully understand what was happening. The doctor asked the maid if she was stealing her Capurci fruits. The girl began to sweat and tremble, saying that everything was wrong and she didn't want it. The protagonist smiled because she managed to obtain evidence that Baron Isidore could not refute. The little girl said that the smell of this plant itself is unique, so it is difficult to steal it outside of dusk. Listening anxiously, said that she just wanted to taste this fruit. But the doctor objected that Capurci is not famous for its taste, and in general, this fruit is not so easy to eat. Then the maid said that, supposedly, Dill had actually asked her to do this, but the guy who had been hiding in the bags all this time said that no. Coming out of his hiding place and straightening his clothes, he declared that this had never happened, and that the girl was blatantly lying to everyone. It dawned on the criminal that the pink-haired man had been here from the very beginning. She asked him in a trembling voice, since when had he been around? The main character smiled smugly and told the thief that her friend said that he did not ask her for anything. The doctor calmly explained to the offender that if you regularly consume the hippie flower, you may experience vomiting, pain in the head and stomach. She also says that when the palace stopped serving seafood, they were unable to use this flower anywhere else because of its smell. The lady believes that Capurcia fruits appeared in the greenhouse, with which they can get rid of this aroma, so they succumb to their greed. The lady asked if she was right, but the maid, trembling all over, asked her to forgive her and said that she did not know anything but was only following orders. A perplexed Aryan asked his friend what was going on, and she said that she wanted to investigate something, so she gave Dill a ring for communication. The tone of the Duchess's voice immediately changed to a very unfriendly one. She sternly asked Dill to call Sir Joaquin here right away. He listened to her. The lady's gaze showed anger, with which she said that she had a personal question for this gentleman. Realizing all the horror and the fact that she had just given herself away in front of Her Highness, the criminal stopped feeling her legs and fell to the floor in shock. The next moment, Isabella's anger seemed to have disappeared, and with a gentle smile, she hugged the Viscount's assistant and thanked her for everything. The girl did not answer her, but simply hugged her back, but she thought that it would be good if they caught the real criminal. Sometime later, when Richie was quietly reading a book in her room, Deal came to her and said that as soon as the maid was tortured, she bit off her tongue and died. She was surprised by this, but not much. The little girl slammed the book with displeasure, because she was angry that they couldn't find out anything just like that. The guy says that that servant was hired 4 years ago, but the information about her identity and background is false, and the person who recommended her has already left the palace. The pink-haired one said that it was the Viscount's assistant at the time, and Richie realized that such people could not stay here for more than 10 days. She understands that this is an excellent opportunity to lead someone into someone else's palace without suspicion, and her presence here will interfere with their plans. But the lady still believes that even if this is so, it turns out that she herself will be in danger. Deal told his friend that she had done a great job today, but she said that it was nothing and that it was enough to just be as smart as she was. The doctor's wife also praised the guy, saying that thanks to him they easily sorted everything out. The young man was very pleased with these words. He admitted that if she has other orders, she can talk about them at any time. The heroine was convinced that he had the temperament of a slave. The pink-haired one decided to say that Mr. Aryan was also delighted with her, although he did not know all the details of what happened. At that moment, when Richie caught the criminal in the act, the boy watched her with burning eyes, as if admiring her very much. Deal thinks he thought his girlfriend was absolutely stunning back then. The protagonist answered in the spirit that it was self-evident, and it seemed so to her too. Dill awkwardly scratched his head and admitted that he himself knew little, but was asking the girl if she had found out anything. She replied that yes, and this matter concerns medicine, so ordinary people would not have noticed anything. The young man asked if she would explain it to Baron Isidore. The heroine stood up from her chair in bewilderment and shock, and asked why he was saying that and whether this man was a doctor. The guy replied that no, but this man has extensive knowledge in the field of medicine. This surprised the young lady very much. For reference, the Viscount's subordinate said that it was this man who helped Art's daughter be born. He adds that he heard that the Viscountess suddenly went into labor on the territory of Baron Isidore, and therefore the Viscount knew nothing about his daughter. According to the guy, the young dad, when his daughter was born, was told that she had blonde hair and green eyes, so he was looking for such 13-year-old girls. The doctor thought that she didn't know the Viscount's story, but if the Baron really has such knowledge, then she has all the pieces of the puzzle together. She thinks it's no surprise that this vile man used hippie poison. Baron Isidore is much more cunning than the girl initially assumed. He has been poisoning everyone in the ducal palace for a long time. The Duchess's brother, meeting his adopted son in the corridor, notified him that their subordinate under the name Milani had been arrested. But then he says that fortunately she committed suicide. Vederick asked him if he knew why she was arrested. He said that she was caught when she picked Kipurchi fruits from the tree of her new assistant. But he knew nothing more. He does not know whether she was arrested for theft or poisoning. Then the young man asked if the Duchess had personally told him anything, and the Baron replied that she was never talkative. The manipulator said that in any case, Est and Cain are still in that palace. The man said that he asked these people to hide for a while. Thoughtfully turning his gaze towards the window, Isidore added that Aryan is still very small, so they still have time. But Vederick suddenly tells his father that he has changed. He no longer eats the food he gives him after becoming close to Art's new assistant. The boy said that he meant the same girl doctor who does an excellent job and takes care of the heir many times better than the Viscount. The man responds by saying that this lady needs to be kept an eye on, and then tells his son that he should try to meet her in person. Isidore believes that Richie is only 13 years old, but she has already attracted the attention of the doctor and Isabella, which means she is not so simple, and they will have a hard time because of her. A terrifying smile appeared on the man's face, and he said that they needed to get rid of it. Isabella, having lunch with the main character in the garden, thanked her for yesterday, and said that she did not expect that such a cutie like her would be useful. She then says that, fortunately, many people in the castle think that she got rid of the thief, but it will be even easier to keep the secret. The girl asked whether a severe punishment would ruin her reputation, but Richie smiled sheepishly when the Duchess replied that she had never been known for her kindness. The woman suddenly said threateningly that from now on those who come to the estate will behave more carefully. The little one is worried that the person who is poisoning the Duke family has not yet been caught. She thinks it should be someone with medical experience. The lady reminds the mistress that she needs to remember to take blood tests more often, and not only for her, but for Arian too. The lady was horrified by the doctor's guess that her son too was probably being gradually fed poison. The little girl thought that she couldn't tell her who she suspected, but she said that it was very possible. Isabella decided to say thank you to the doctor and asked if she could promise her that she would stay at their estate and take care of Arian. Richie said yes, and she wouldn't leave until he was an adult. She asked what she was going to do next. The girl said she didn't know. The lady asked how about becoming the chief doctor on the estate, but the heroine said that she already had a viscount. Madame said that she would fire him because, although he is a good doctor, he only cares about finding his daughter. Gently taking the child's hands in hers, the Duchess asked her if she would agree if she took care of her like no one else in the empire. The doctor awkwardly scratched her head and smiled and said that she would think about her proposal. Then the woman asked her if she wanted anything, because this time she wanted to repay her. She said that she didn't need anything. The lady once again asked if she had any unfinished business or something that she would like to receive. When the lady said this, the girl immediately remembered that moment from her past life, where she was sitting in prison before the death penalty, and the last thing she thought about was her lost parents. Yet she confesses to the Duchess that there is something that her heart desires very much. The woman prepared to listen to her wishes with a smile. The main character says that she would really like to find her biological parents. Isabella was surprised by this request, and the orphan said that at the orphanage they told her that she was born on a lake located in the border area. Richie says that if someone lost a child with brown hair and green eyes, she would want to do a blood test with that person. The Duchess promised to make an announcement throughout the empire. She believes that everyone needs a family, so she allows the girl to consider her her mother. She said, stunned, that she was a commoner, and Isabella was from a great noble family. The doctor thanked her for this, but refused. Her Highness was upset by the girl's words, but she did not contradict her and accepted her decision that this was wrong. The garden of the ducal palace shone with beauty as always. The large and tall fountain gave it special elegance and magic. Walking around the courtyard, the young doctor thinks that according to the law, a nobleman cannot marry a commoner, not to mention adoption. The little girl smiled at the thought that in her previous life, she would never have even had the chance to meet the Duchess in person. Suddenly, while passing by the playground, she notices Vederick and Arian competing in a game of tennis. The older guy threw the ball towards the enemy so that he couldn't even hit it. The heroine felt sorry that they couldn't hit the ball. Judging by the manipulator's expression, he is pleased with his throw. The heir, having gone to get the ball and turned around, noticed his doctor behind his friend. Seeing that the boy was looking at her, in a whisper, so that the other young man would not hear, she told him not to give up. The young duke greatly benefited from his friend's support, and after it, he felt much better and determined to win. He threw the ball to his opponent so that he didn't have time to think of anything and didn't even hit it back, which made him very angry. Vederick irritably asked Arian how he could play him like that if he served against the rules. The youth said the ball allegedly hit the edge of his racket and bounced off. He asked the heir whether his motor cells were developed at all. He said that he deliberately threw him in that direction, but the provocateur continued to insist that this was a violation and accused his brother of not knowing the rules. Vederick laughed at his friend and said that this was probably the reason why the servants despised him. The main character was very upset that this impudent person started an argument and offended Arian. She decides to stand up for her friend and goes to the guy. The girl states that she saw everything and there were no violations. He outrageously asked her what she could possibly know about this game. The orphan tells Vederick that he should have reacted faster and reached towards the sword, so it was entirely his mistake. The young man gritted his teeth in displeasure because some doctor's assistant dared to argue with him, but then the Crown Duke decides to stand up for his friend and orders the manipulator not to be rude to her. He even forbids him to touch her. The boy's gaze became very cold and frightening. He repeated that he would never allow him to do this. Vederick asked him in bewilderment what he was doing, but he reminded his brother that he was, in fact, the future master. The boy told his friend that he could not behave like that with his subordinate and on his territory. The protagonist was very delighted by Arian's behavior. She is shocked that he has managed to grow up and change so much. The provocateur indignantly asked the kid if this commoner, about whose life he didn't even know anything, was dearer to him. Richie asked what was strange about this, if it was clear that she was more beautiful and charming, so it was obvious that she was more important than him. Vederick was seriously stunned by the doctor's expressions, but when she said that she was also smarter than him, he went completely mad. Arian asked his brother not to be angry and not to misunderstand him. He is also dear to him. The boy explained that he just wanted to warn him that he needed to be polite with his girlfriend. Tom didn't like the fact that some little thing like him could warn him about something, but the young duke smiled and said that it was time for him to go. The heir asked the doctor if she was going to go to her chambers and invited her to show her. She agreed and thanked him. Walking towards the palace, the young gentleman asked the heroine if she had taken off the ring that Dill had given her, and she said yes, because it was disposable. Then the jealous man asked if she threw him out, but the girl asked in surprise why she had to do this. He still suggested that she throw it away later, and she, not understanding anything, agreed. Watching how sweetly the heir and his doctor interacted with each other, Vederick clenched his teeth angrily. Later, the Baron's son, talking to his dad, cannot suppress his anger because he could not answer Arian, and he simply left. His father advises him to relax and just trust that person. Several years ago, a certain man came to Isidore and said that if he did everything as he said, then all his sister's possessions would go to him. Leaving by carriage from the palace of the dukes, Isabella's brother regrets that he himself did not personally witness the end of the Viscount's daughter, as that man told him. At this time, the Viscount is already descending from the ship, which arrived in the Duchy of Sirius. Dill meets him on the shore and says that he did a good job. The man smiled sweetly at him, greeted him, and said that they had not seen each other for a long time. But there is no smile on the guy's face. He sees that the mentor returned from the trip alone this time, which means he again failed to find his daughter. Then the guy drew attention to the large number of suitcases that Ferrelman brought with him. The doctor asked to load everything into the carriage. He said that there were dresses, shoes, and jewelry worn by noblewomen of Erbia, laboratory equipment, rare herbs, and medical books. He smiled and said that he had brought a lot, after which he asked if he had bought all these things for Richie. The doctor replied that it would be of no use to anyone else, and Deal laughed and said that he could honestly admit that he remembered her and bought all this. Ark countered that then she might think he was rushing her to take the paternity test, and he didn't want to put too much pressure on her. The subordinate was very embarrassed, because although his mentor ordered him to take all the suitcases to the carriage, he was still amazed by the number. But then the doctor seriously asked him if the Duchess had bought anything for his assistant during his absence. He thought a little and said that Richie didn't want anything, but she asked the lady for one favor. Frighteningly approaching the guy with his face, the Viscount menacingly asked what kind of service this was, and the subordinate replied that she wanted to find her parents. This confused the man, and the young man added that there were people who took a blood test, but it turned out that they were not her parents. But Deal encouraged the mentor that since his assistant decided to start searching for a family, she did not abandon the research. The heroine, working in her room, considered the situation crazy because she had already checked everything, but had not found the reason why Arian felt better, but he had seizures and dizziness. The girl understands that she needs to somehow find out the cause of the disease and cure it, but she thought that, fortunately, the Baron had not done anything suspicious in recent days. The lady finds it all too tiresome. The doctor suggested that if she asked the lady about the Baron, she would say that he did not have enough intelligence and talent to come up with such a good plan. A question arose in the little lady's head. Is there someone else behind him, and if so, then things are very bad. Suddenly Dill comes into her office and calls out to her. She asks him what happened. He notified her that the chief physician of the Dukes had returned, and the girl smiled and said that she would soon come to him. Leaving the room to see the visiting Viscount, the main character unexpectedly meets her friend. However, Arian, noticing that Dill, who had recently worn her ring, was walking next to Richie, suddenly became alert and frowned, but he stopped paying attention to him and asked his friend where she was going. She replied that she wanted to greet her mentor after his return. The boy was upset when he heard this, because he wanted to ask her to read a book to him. He asked if she would return, because he would not be able to sleep without her. The protagonist replied that it just seemed like that to him and he could fall asleep without her, but he still continued to ask her to come to him. Unfortunately, the young lady could not talk to him for a long time, and soon said goodbye and left, and Arian, irritably watching Dill go with her, said that they would see each other again. The doctor smiled, because she thought that the young heir was just like a little child. Arriving at the chief doctor's office, the girl happily greeted the boss. He also greeted her with a smile. Ark said that she came on time. Pointing his finger at the dresses, he said that he had accumulated a lot of unnecessary things, but she could take them for herself. The heroine was very surprised by the beauty and cuteness of the dresses. She asked why there were so many of them and why they were all summer, to which he said that it was hot in Erbia. Richie was slightly upset by the fact that she now had a lot of beautiful dresses, but then the girl notices a very large jar with a certain plant inside. She began to look at her in surprise and said that she was seeing him for the first time. Farrellman explained that this plant is called soft grass, and Erbia has a special climate. So many rare herbs can be found there. The man admitted that he usually does not pay attention to those plants that have a weak effect, but he knows that she is conducting her research. The doctor asked if he bought the flower because he thought she might like it, and he replied that that was not the only reason. The lady thanked him. Richie heard that the herbs that grow in Erbia have a special effect. Doctors began to trade with each other more often, only when the doctor in a past life turned 19 years old, and Arian's death and subsequent commotion happened just as she was preparing to begin her research. Several days pass, and the main character, handing her mentor her document with the work done, asks him to check it. The doctor says she learned that soft grass affects the environment and that it can be used for Arian's symptoms. The little girl just as decisively added that if she turns out to be right, then, even without knowing the origin of his illness, she can cure it. The man was interested in the assistant's words, but he said that she prescribed the medications rather choosily. She replied that there was no other way. The doctor warned that if she wanted to use this treatment, she would need to go to Erbia, but the young duke was now only 14 years old. To justify this, the girl said that Arian is the only heir of the Sirius family, and he could die if his illness is not taken seriously. Richie also understands that if he stays here, the Baron may do something, but in another country he will be protected from him and his son. Nervously clutching the fabric of her robe, the doctor said that they must take him to Erbia as soon as possible. She told the Viscount that he, as a doctor, must do everything possible to cure him. The young assistant wanted to say something else, but suddenly she felt Ark's hand on her head. He said that she had done a good job and he would talk to the lady about it. But then they became modest, and the man said that it happened thanks to his instinct that he needed to buy this grass, but she said that it was the merit of her intelligence. The doctor and doctor continued to argue about who made the greatest contribution to the search for a cure, and Deal smiled and thought about how similar they were. Seated in a luxurious living room with his assistant, the Duchess and her son, Farrellman told the woman that he had something important to tell her. She noticed that many people had gathered in this room, so she believes that his matter is very serious. But she warned that if he wanted to quit, he must first wait for Richie to grow up and replace him. He said that's not the point. The man claims that his assistant has found a cure for Arian's disease. Her Highness's palms clenched and trembled. She asked excitedly what kind of medicine it was. The doctor explained that he would simply need to regularly eat a certain type of grass called soft grass that grows in Erbia. The mother asked if it was difficult to find this plant, to which the doctor said that it was not, and if you try, everything will work out. However, he tells Isabella that the soil in her domain is not good enough to grow soft grass, as it is sensitive to hot temperatures. Madame, sweating on her face and stunned, asked what they should do now. It was explained to her that her son would have to undergo continuous treatment for 5 years in warm Erbia, where the temperature is relatively stable. The Viscount says that if Arian uses soft grass, the symptoms will soon disappear and he will return to normal life. The lady could not recover from the shock, and Ark continued to say that after recovery he would need to undergo examinations. But his adult life would be much better, and besides, Erbia was safe. He also said that he and his assistant will continue to think about other methods of treatment if they are not satisfied with this option. But for today, this is the best solution. Suddenly, the Duchess quickly calmed down and said that if they both thought so, then she would believe them and agree. She decided to ask Arian what he thought about this whole situation. He, nervously clenching his fists, said that even if he refused, he would not be able to be cured, which he really wanted. But he decided that he wants to be healthy and look proud in front of others and Richie, so he agrees with a smile to a 5-year treatment in another country. However, he asked his mother to send a couple of knights with him because he wants to continue fencing. Mom consoled her son with the fact that they would still come and visit him 4 times a year, and the main character looked at them with a bit of sadness. Richie completely sank when she remembered from her past life that the sea route would soon be closed, so it would be difficult for the ducal family to visit him. The reason why the protagonist needs to take Arian to another country as soon as possible is that the sea route will be blocked by pirates. This will last 5 years until Prince Jade drives the robbers from the sea. Otherwise, they will not be able to get to Erbia and maintain contact with the young man by letters. But the doctor is pleased that her friend will be away from Vederick, and without his influence, he will grow up, independently forming his own personality. The lady understands that the boy needs to be taken care of so that he does not become weaker. Now her main priority is to let the heir grow up healthy. Later in the evening, the main character, showing her patient 2 red and blue bags of medicine, says that the first is for a high temperature, and the second is for if he gets dizzy. The boy says that she is overdoing it, and she can just visit him and bring him the necessary medicine, but she says that the sea route will soon be closed. The doctor suddenly thanks her friend for agreeing to go, even though it is very difficult to be far from family. She also apologizes for a bunch of medications, but he just smiled and said that all this was necessary for his health. His words also made the protagonist smile, because she thought that although he was a child, he behaved like an adult in such situations. Arian admitted that he would like her to accompany him, but the doctor said that she needed to stay. He agreed, and asked to pack the things on the table. When the lady asked what it was, my lord said that it was Vederick's candy, and, according to him, it could replace a healthy meal without harm to health. Richie was very wary when she heard that it was Vederick who gave these suspicious sweets to the heir. Approaching the gentleman intimidatingly, she asked why he had never told her anything about this, but he stated that it had been a long time already. Although the baby said that he had not eaten them for a long time, the doctor was still shocked that all this time she had thought that she knew everything about his diet. The doctor guesses that if the manipulator gave sweets to his brother on the sly, it means that it cannot be something for health, but rather the opposite. She resolutely said that he would not take these chocolates with him to Erbia. The young duke asked in surprise why. She explained that if he consumed unhealthy sweets, it would interfere with his recovery, and she had never heard of a disease that could be treated with sweets. The girl asked her friend to take her words as advice from a doctor. He agreed, after which he asked his friend to lie down on the bed next to him. Richie was very surprised by his request, and at first embarrassedly said that she couldn't. But Arian, whose expression had become as cute as that of a little puppy, asked again if she really couldn't do it. The heroine, who was struck to the very heart by this pitiful look, realized that she could not resist. Still, she said that she agreed, which made her friend very happy. The lady thought that there was nothing wrong with this, because they would be separated for a long time. She lay down on the bed, and Arian smilingly said that it was the first time they were lying like this, and when he left, he would remember this moment with trembling in his chest. The heroine smiled gently, and told him that he should return safe, sound, and healthy. The doctor's wife gently touched the heir's cheek with her palm, and thought that even if she was not around, he was bound to grow up strong. The boy laughed and asked if she worried about him that much. Turning his face closer to her, Arian asked why she was so sad, even if they would still see each other often. She didn't say anything in response, because she felt even sadder because she knew that they wouldn't be able to see each other until they grew up. Suddenly, Legacy tells his friend that he will need her help with something. The girl asked what he needed, and the young man asked not to forget him, and the fact that they were closer to each other than just friends. But the next moment, he convincingly asked her not to tell anyone about this except him, and the protagonist promised that she would not do this. Taking her friend's hand, she said that she would think about him every day for 5 years, after which she asked him to return unharmed. Arian asked her the same, and said that he would also always think about her.